Big 12 Today with Ari and James. Monday through Friday, 8 a to 11 a Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a Wheels Off Wednesday. With James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. A lot to get to today. And you know it's a busy day when we start with Lil Jon.
If Little John is wrong, I don't want to be right.
It's true. If you're back in your DJing days, you played a lot of the Lil Jon.
Shout out to the Inferno.
Yeah.
The Inferno, which is more than just Arizona State's home football crowd. The Inferno was a club back in the day in a small town where I dabbled in a little DJing. Pitbull, Rihanna, all the tracks.
Lil Jon.
Little John.
Had to be the greatest club in all of Salina, Kansas.
The headliner. I remember that my very first day, my shift started at like 6 p.m., way too early. People aren't really filing into the club until 10, 11 o'clock, right?
You don't say. You don't go clubbing and
you don't go
listen
clubbing
to DJ
at 6
music
p.m.
at 6 p.m., 7 p.m.
And it was a newer establishment. So at 6 or 7, whatever time it was, early evening, like the sun's not even down, I look out in the crowd and there's an elderly couple sitting and eating and having some drinks. It was an older demo. Well, I hadn't really prepared for that audience. I had nothing but, heavy bass, like house music, pop tracks. And so I just, I bump it. Just like full throttle, 10 out of 10. Oh, yeah. So they're sitting there their plates are rattling. They're like 75 years old. The owner came over to me and he came up to the booth and he's like, hey, let's read the room a little bit. Might want to pump the brakes. He's like, we've got an in-house playlist. Why don't you just start there? I was like, yeah, this might not be for me.
Why don't you read the room a little bit? Maybe notice that, there's 75-year-olds dining with us and there's some Stevie Wonder out there.
Yeah, that we needed like a little more rock and roll. I was serenading them with Nelly and Usher and Pitbull and, all the things.
It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, along with James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. Great to have you with us today and every day here on your home for the Big 12. Tune in Big 12 studios. And cheers to all of you Modelo full-time fans. Modelo Fan Rules, number 99. The season never really ends when you're a full-time fan. It just changes shape, portals, drafts, signings, prep, and you stay ready. Well, we are ready as we continue our series of breaking down the top 5 offensive tackles in the Big 12. So yesterday we concluded our series on the defensive side of the football, taking a look at all position groups, defensive line, defensive ends, safeties, corners, linebackers, and then defensive players. So now we move to the offensive side of the football. So we'll do offensive tackles, interior linemen. We also have quarterback, running back, wide receivers, tight ends, and then, of course, the top 5 offensive players.
What did you find putting together our list for the offensive tackles? Because the number one thing that stood out to me is it is a new era at that position.
Yes. Yeah.
Like a ton of guys gone.
Okay, spoiler alert. Do you have any freshmen in your top 5?
No, I don't, but I wondered if you might. Because there are some 5-star freshmen, and there's going to be 2 freshmen that we know of starting at a tackle position at 2 schools in the Big 12, a la Jordan Seaton back in the day a couple of years ago. But he's now gone, transfers out, and then you lose your top 4 or 5 tackles to the NFL draft. I think that's a bigger hole to fill than maybe it's getting credit for. You lose Lomu, you lose Fano, you lose Ahanachor, you lose Jordan Seaton. There was only one guy coming back that made first, second, or third team All Big 12, and that's Cincinnati's Joe Cotton. Spoiler alert, he might be on my list. The other thing I noticed was last year's All Big 12 team, there were one offensive tackle that was a newcomer. Everybody else had been at their school the year before. Ahanachor was in his second year at Arizona State. The only newcomer that was all Big 12 last year at that position was Joe Cotton. So he's the outlier. Everybody else has very much been like developmental guys. So my point in saying all that is it's wide open, and it was really hard to put this list together.
Yeah, no, well said. Completely agree. Can't wait to see who you have won. And yeah, I think there's a lot of variance probably in both of our lists. We also, as it's a power ranking Wednesday, we'll be power ranking the top 5 transfer portal classes in football. So today is a full-on list day. It's a wheels off Wednesday, but really it's a list Wednesday.
I love list days.
Do you?
They're my favorite. I'm a big list guy. If there's a list to be had, I'm here for it. It's list season, and it's my favorite season because off-season never sleeps.
That's right.
These guys aren't playing. Let's rank them.
Let's rank them. One list I did see that is unrelated to Big 12 football. This comes from Boston's WFXT from May 6th, 1999, okay? So this is the Fox affiliate in Boston that had this back on May 6th, 1999, okay? So it would be exactly, what year is it? 2026, 27 years ago.
Okay, I didn't realize this tweet actually was posted in 1999, which adds a lot of context.
Yes. So basically saying like what we can't live without keeps changing. If you're watching us on Big 12 Studios, you could see the actual image from this tweet. So 1974, what we can't live without was the rotary phone, rabbit ears, and a typewriter. What are rabbit ears, James?
Television antennas.
Yeah.
Got to get the local channels.
Imagine that. I think we've evolved a bit in our television consuming.
Just a smidge.
Just a smidge. In 1999, that became cell phone. So rotary phone, cell phone. 1974, rabbit ears became cable, and the typewriter became the computer. So here's the question that it poses. What we can't live without keeps changing, and they were looking 25 years ahead to 2024. It's now 2026. So what can we not live without based on the rotary phone, cell phone, rabbit ears, cable, typewriter, computer? I would say first thing would be rotary phone, cell phone, smartphone.
Smartphone, yeah. Smartphone's definitely number one. I would say number 2, Wi-Fi.
So from rabbit ears, cable to Wi-Fi.
I would add Wi-Fi. And then number 3, that's tough. What would be the third thing we can't live without? Like, there's really, between 1999 and 2024 is the example that they're using. I know it's 26 now. Like, you could argue the cell phone has just kind of evolved into our smartphones.
Yeah.
Cable has evolved into Wi-Fi because it is the new cable. Wi-Fi is what you use for your television. If you
Would
have
it be
a smart
streaming? Would that be streaming? And then the last one, typewriter, computer, Wi-Fi?
So, smartphone streaming Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can make a case for that.
You can make a case that it's AI. Typewriter, computer, AI. It's the level on top of your computer that basically automates things.
Mm-hmm. AI is where I was headed next in terms of what this list would look like for 2030 or 2035. And then
We'll go ahead 25 years because that's the method they're using here.
so technology,
So 2050, 2051.
robots. Humanoid robots.
You're all about the humanoid robots. We have a choice here. We have robots that are not humanoids.
Look.
We don't have to make things that look like ourselves to scare us.
And I'm not saying they're a good thing.
And we don't need them having opposable thumbs. Why would we want that?
No.
You open doors suddenly you can't close.
And I don't even know that I'm team robot. Like, I have a lot of questions about the robots.
You are definitely team robot. I can tell you that
But
right off the bat.
I could tell you that the robots are coming. Like,
Yeah.
there's no avoiding it.
Well, they're here.
They're all exactly. They're already here, but
The humanoid robot's the one that are coming potentially.
and they're going to be.
I'd advise against it, but go ahead.
I mean,
Indulge.
there's already humanoid robots operating in Amazon warehouses, building vehicles in Germany for BMW. Like, they're very much already on the map and operational in the commercial side of things. When it becomes more mainstream into the we're already capable of that now. So 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that's the big one that stands out, which is just evolution of AI. I saw what's Tesla call their robot?
Tesla.
Optimus?
Sure.
I think it's Optimus. We were in Legacy West 2 weekends ago. I saw one in person. Man, it really freaked me out. Number one, it's way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Number two, it looks very human-like. and it just looks incredibly rock solid. Like if I was going to pick Optimus, the Tesla robot, against a grizzly bear, I think I'm taking the robot. And my wife's like, that's not scary. I could beat that thing up. And I'm like, what? That thing could crush you with its bare humanoid hands.
Yeah.
Like they are so strong and so powerful that essentially they are going to be so advanced just in terms of artificial intelligence, what they can do physically compared to us, that they are going to be what we are, not like humans to pets, right? Like we love pets. Pets are great, but we have all the power. We are going to be the pets, and the robots are going to be us.
Yeah. Can we throw that graphic up again, Anthony? I think the biggest takeaway from this is we cannot adequately predict what the future is going to look like. And this is the best example of it. You know, like in 1974, I don't think anything from the 1999 column, cell phone, cable, computer, would have been predicted by the folks in 1974. In the same way that the folks in 1999 could have never predicted it in 2026, those would be replaced by smartphone. What's that? Cable, streaming. What's that? Computer, AI. Huh? What?
That's a really good point. And I think that's what makes the future so exciting, and I think why people are so obsessed with it, myself included, is
Exciting's a good word. Frightening was the word I thought of, but exciting's way better. I prefer that
I'm
one.
not nervous. I'm excited. I would say that just the unknown, you don't know if you're right or wrong. And I think people play into that, just the exciting fact that nobody really knows.
Well, but I think people believe they know or can predict. I mean, we all do. I say people. Like, I think I can predict the future on certain things, and there's no way you can.
Totally. Who was the guy I was listening to a podcast that when I brought up the flying cars, and just listening to that, and this guy, like everything he's saying, maybe he's just, giving coach speak, if you will, but at least his foundation for why he's heavily invested in a lot of these projects, it felt like he had the right angle, but it was really enlightening just in terms of like, holy smokes, these companies are so far in the future compared to what we're actually seeing as everyday citizens with the flying cars, with the humanoid robots. One thing he's really doing is essentially cracking down on school shootings. They've built this super advanced technology that's going to be, their goal is to have it in every school across America. It's going to eliminate any chance of anybody walking through the door with any weapon of any kind.
How do they do that?
I'll have to pull it up. Essentially, super advanced facial recognition, and then essentially, like, for lack of a better term, I would call it X-ray vision, to where you walk in, it's not just a metal detector, like it's actually kind of in a metal detector form, where it can scan through everything you bring into the building to see if you have a weapon.
Wow. Other things I thought, like, man, what would we think of this in 1999 that we can't live without today, which would be 2-day shipping or same-day delivery. And think about where, like, online shopping was in 1999 versus where it is today. You know, I remember, like, first got a credit card, early 2000s, and it's like this fear of purchasing something online, you just didn't know. You know, like, oh, is it going to come? How long will it take? I'm paying for shipping. How much does that cost? Are they going to steal my credit? You know, like, there was just so many things that was like, it was too scary. Amazon, in many ways, revolutionized the online shopping industry because it just made it so much more approachable and easier.
Very much so. And Amazon is now promoting 1-hour shipping.
Yeah, I saw that in Dallas. I think
1
it's
hour.
in certain locations. Yeah.
First, we have drones delivering our products. Now we have 1-hour shipping.
Well, I wonder though, is the drone? I feel like those are related. Like, shouldn't the drones be responsible for 1-hour shipping here?
I would think so. And maybe that's like a rollout that they're doing together. But also, online shopping, that's a great point that you make there, because also that's where a lot of evil plays in too. Like, there are so many websites and so many things that look like a certain product, and it turns out they're just trying to steal your credit card information. So my credit card got stolen, got hacked online digitally, because my 13-year-old daughter thought she was sending me a link to buy Neatos, which are these stress balls that's a viral sensation. They're selling out everywhere. It's the weirdest thing. They're stress balls. but they've branded it as this really cool, fun thing for kids. They're sold out at Target. They're sold out at Walmart. You cannot get them in person. They do not exist. And so a lot of these hackers, if you will, or con artists are building these websites that look like Neato is the brand websites. But instead of Neato.com, it'll be Neato.co, or they'll misspell the Neato. It has a really unique spelling. There you go. You pulled it up. And she sent me a link, and I was in the middle of something. She sent me exactly what she wanted me to buy. I popped in my credit card information. Less than 24 hours later, I got a notification from the credit card company that, hey, somebody's got your info. They're trying to buy some really weird stuff. We're shutting down your account.
Huh.
And I'm like, man, that could happen to anybody. And that could have gone really poorly.
I could buy a 4-pack of these Neato Teeny Swirls, $68 on Amazon.
Oh, yeah, the second level sellers or whatever, the resale market is insane. Normally it'd be like $20 for a pack of 8. People are selling them for $60, $70 a pop, making thousands of dollars reselling these things.
I was today years old when I realized what these things are.
It's just a stress ball.
Yeah. Incredible. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Key takeaway, we can't predict what's next, but it is really interesting to look back and think about all those things. Just gives you a really interesting perspective. We have a busy day today, a lot to get to, including the power rankings. Our top 5 transfer portal football classes are coming up. Plus, we're celebrating George Clooney's birthday by really the only way that we possibly can, dressing up and acting like George Clooney. No, I'm kidding. But we'll have
That would have been way more fun. We should do that. Take power rankings to a whole new level.
Do like a themed power ranking?
Yeah, I know you're a big costume guy, big theme guy.
Love a good theme.
Right?
Love a good theme. Shahan Jayaraja joins us coming up in about 20 minutes from now, 40 minutes from now. Plus, we'll get to the latest from Ross Dellinger saying that the AFCA, the Coaches Association, that they have unanimously voted, I should say, for a 2014 playoff, the max amount of teams for a playoff, with no conference championships. So basically, the recommendation for the AFCA voting was the maximum number of participants effectively endorsing a 2014 field, also recommending the elimination of the conference championship games in the playoff, and then have the playoff conclude by the second week of January. Now, all this makes sense, right? If you're a coach, conference championship games get in the way of potentially getting to a playoff. You play the regular season, have a 2014 playoff, you have more opportunities to get in. And obviously, the more playoffs you get to, the more job security you have. So this makes a ton of sense for why coaches would support this.
I think this is a huge step, too. Now, the coaches aren't the ones dictating where the money goes, but bowl games, like it or not, are essentially becoming obsolete with so many players opting out, so many players sitting out. You never know what the rosters are going to look like. But this isn't something that can just flip a switch overnight. You've got to figure out the calendar. You've got that Army-Navy game, which is very much in the way. But a 2014 model, I think coaches are supportive of it for job security reasons, yes. But also, it's something fans are very much going to get behind. It's not a coincidence that postseason viewership for any sport, the NBA playoffs happening right now, the NFL postseason, March Madness, the greatest tournament to ever exist. We are obsessed as sports fans with elimination-style tournaments, playoffs. So the larger that pool is for college football, the better, because more and more casual fans are going to be invested. And I would argue that with this 12-team playoff, we're already there. We're already there to the point where if you don't make the playoff, for a lot of teams and programs and fan bases, it's already considered a disappointing season. Like in college basketball, the benchmark is to make the NCAA tournament. In college football, once we expanded from 4, beyond 4, and got rid of essentially these higher prestige New Year's Day bowls, it was over. So 12, 24, 134. Make it as big as you want for people to get on board.
That's James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. On the way next, we power rank. It's a power ranking Wednesday, so we're going to be power ranking the top 5 transfer portal classes in the Big 12 on football. Plus, we're power ranking something random on George Clooney's 65th birthday. It's Big 12 today, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. We'll be visiting with Shahan Jayaraja, our buddy from CBS Sports, coming up in about 20 minutes. Get caught up with Shahan, but it is a Power Ranking Wednesday. Remember, it's not good enough to just have things in this world. You have to power rank them accordingly, and so that's what we do on Wednesdays. We power rank something Big 12, and then we power rank something random, and we'll be power ranking randomly the top 5 heist movies of all time based on George Clooney's birthday and his association with the Ocean's 11 series. But first, let's power rank the top 5 Big 12 transfer portal classes in football.
Man, we are ranking so many things today. I'm all over the map. Thought we were doing offensive tackles, have to pivot back to the transfer portal
Oh, it's
classes.
lots going on. Lots of lists.
So much happening. It's list season. All right, number 5 for me is my dark horse candidate. It is Kansas State. Kansas State at number 5.
Homer.
Their portal class has been all over the map. The Athletic gave it a D+ grade. Sports Illustrated says it's one of the top 7 most intriguing classes in the entire country, not just the Big 12. But I look at collectively, number 1, Wendell Gregory, the Big 12 reigning defensive freshman of the year, the edge rusher who transfers in from Oklahoma State, had double-digit sacks. They've brought in 3 portal running backs, Jay Harris from Oregon, who is a Division II All-American and their top rusher in the college football playoff. They've added Rodney Fields, who was the top rusher last year at Oklahoma State. And then at receiver, Avery Johnson, his receivers last year dropped more passes than any other quarterback in the Big 12. They add a whole bunch of guys. Isaiah Williams from Texas A&M was productive. Josh Manning from Missouri was productive. So I think collectively, K-State, both sides of the ball, number 5 for me.
I also have Kansas State at number 5. Yeah, I agree with you. And, I mean, so I start with who they didn't lose in the portal, right? They bring in a new head coach, and even though there's a familiarity with the program, you figure in a lot of cases you lose a bunch of these players. But retaining Avery Johnson, Joe Jackson, and then even Jerron Tibbs, I think, are huge for this team in terms of their big 3. They do lose Jace Brown, but I think Jerron Tibbs and then what they add in the portal at receiver will be extremely helpful. 14 transfers signed by Klein, who played 200-plus snaps last season, including 5 starters from other FBS programs, including heavily important and impactful offensive and defensive line guys. I agree with you on K-State being a dark horse. It's annoying and obnoxious to me, but I completely agree. And, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Jay Harris, Josh Manning, Wendell Gregory, Makai Mason, Prevard from Virginia. So I feel like this is not a volume play as much as it is a quality play. And that's why I have Kansas State at number 5.
Number 4.
Yeah, number 4 for me is where I put Houston. I mean, Willie Fritz in Houston proved that the portal works in terms of the way they identify talent in his second year. Now I think this portal class is the next step. Slightly better than it was last year. And remember, they won 10 games last year, relying heavily on transfers, like Connor Wegman at quarterback. But now they load up in the backfield with Makai Hughes, the Oregon transfer, who was a 1,400-yard rusher back-to-back seasons when he was coached by Fritz at Tulane. He was an All-American. Shadray Hurst on the offensive line, a 2-time All-AAC first-team All-League guy, number 6 guard in the country, according to Pro Football Focus last year. And then I just like the other depth pieces. They brought in a starting safety from Tulane, a tight end from UTSA, a receiver from Oregon State. Not huge splash, like blow-you-away guys, but guys that were super productive, albeit on bad teams. I've got Houston at 4.
Number 4 for me is the Arizona Wildcats. And similar to K-State in that it's not a huge volume play, but where they added makes a huge difference. And, I think as we move towards the top of these rankings, we're going to both have teams that have a ton of players that are added through the portal. But at the bottom of these top 5, I wanted teams that, made impactful transfer portal additions. And Arizona's at the top of that list because this was a team that didn't need to add a ton. They have a ton coming back. The biggest area of concern was their secondary, which they lose all those guys to the NFL draft. And I think they did a really good job in replacing Dalton Johnson, Tredain Stukes, Genesis Smith, and Michael Dansby. They went out and got Tyrese Boss from Wyoming, who made 12 starts. Northern Colorado's All Big Sky safety Cam Chapa, 4 interceptions and 88 tackles, plus Dalen Austin, a former 4-star from Oregon. A lot of competition there. And then Malcolm Hartzog, the big name we've talked about all offseason, the Nebraska safety. So I just think it's not exactly a volume play as much as it is They got a lot of They threw a bunch of numbers of their biggest weaknesses and should, I think, come out the other side with those being strengths. Arizona number 4.
Arizona was my top team out.
Houston was my top team out.
Okay, there it is. So I'm assuming we have the top 3. Number 3 for me is Arizona State. They lose Leavitt, Tyson, and Brown, but they didn't blink. Arizona State, in the previous 3 recruiting cycles, only had 4 transfers graded at a 90 or better score by rivals. This cycle alone, they landed 3. They've got a top 13 class, according to Rivals.com nationally. But when you remove teams with new coaches who brought their entire rosters with them, that ranking jumps to number 7. This is a very underrated class. They've got 2 of the top 5 wide receivers coming in, Omarion Miller from Colorado and then Reed Harris from Boston College. The nation's leading tackler at linebacker. Oh, and an all-SEC quarterback, but he played for a really bad Kentucky team, and so he was overlooked and under-recruited in the portal. I love what Dillingham has done this cycle.
Yeah, what's interesting is I actually don't have Arizona State in my top 5 because even though I'm excited about Cutter Boley and some of the people they brought in, I'm sort of going to the other side of the players they've lost, especially Leavitt. And then,
so you did more of a net haul.
Correct.
Got it.
I didn't just account for who you brought in; it's who you lost as well. Colorado is my number 3 here. Colorado added 43 players via the portal. So when you talk about not a high volume play for Arizona and Kansas State, Colorado is the opposite, especially given they didn't have a coaching change, and yet they still had huge roster churn. DeAndre Moore, I think in terms of what he's bringing to the table, Brennan Marion as the offensive coordinator now coming in, his experience in recruiting DeAndre Moore to Texas initially, plus they bring in Boo Carter from Tennessee, and Leona Lafau, the linebacker from Texas as well. 3 impactful players that played in the SEC are coming over to Colorado. Look, they're number 3 on ESPN's transfer portal rankings. They were 18th on threes and then 21st on 24/7s. So I think it's interesting because, again, there's a lot of variance in how they're viewed, but I'm a big fan of this transfer portal class, and I think Colorado's a major bounce back here because of it.
Love their class. Another team that just missed the cut for me. Number 2 for me is Oklahoma State. 1 year removed from the worst season in program history. Eric Morris walks in, opens the portal, builds what some believe could be a contender. Now, he did it with a cheat code. He hit Sim All and just brought his entire team with him from North Texas. The crown jewel is Mestamaker. But also, I went past that and look at a lot of guys that are coming over that weren't with him at North Texas. I think James Williams could be the steal of the class, the edge rusher from Florida State, who's from Wichita, Kansas, had 6.5 sacks and 8.5 TFLs over the last couple of years. He was a top 25 edge rusher transfer. And then the cornerback from Kansas State, they bring in a cornerback who was a starter last year at Texas Tech and Mo Horn. They brought in 13 guys with him from North Texas and still had a class of about 40. So there's plenty of cats that weren't just North Texas holdovers.
Number 2 for me is Texas Tech. And a big reason for that is because of Brendan Sorsby. Texas Tech would unquestionably be number 1 on this list if not for the Sorsby situation hanging over, because he is their top recruit, or their top transfer portal addition, and he may not be eligible to play this year. But beyond him, obviously, we've talked a ton this offseason about Trey White, Austin Romaine. They brought in Malcolm Simmons, the wide receiver from Auburn, Mateen Ibirogba from Wake Forest. It's loaded, and especially along the edge of the defense, they actually may have. Now, David Bailey and Romello Height were fantastic, and then they had the interior as well with Lee Hunter and Skyler Gill-Howard, but they may have actually added a greater amount of pressure players along their defensive line. So that to me, but again, I'm going back to, you can make the case for Oklahoma State or Texas Tech 1 or 2. For me, it was Texas Tech at 2 simply because of the Sorsby situation.
Yeah. I think you're splitting hairs with these two, both in the top 5 nationally. For me, Texas Tech is number 1, even without Brendan Sorsby, and I did take that into account, but I just look collectively at the depth that they brought in with Austin Romaine, the K-State linebacker, who is their replacement for Jacob Rodriguez, 2-time second-team All-Big 12, and he only played like half the season last year with an injury, still had crazy numbers. The edge rusher, Trey White from San Diego State, had 13 sacks last year. Like, he is a guy that wasn't on the field every snap, but when he was out there, he has some Romello height to him in the way he gets after the quarterback. Igor Rogba, the defensive tackle, who was a top 5 overall transfer portal ad. But I think the group I'm most excited about are the receivers. Kenny Johnson was the leading receiver at Pitt, 1,000-yard guy last season. Dante Lee from Liberty had averaged 22 yards per catch. He stretches the field. And then all that buzz about the Auburn receiver who went to Texas, he wasn't the most productive Auburn receiver on their roster.
Yeah.
That was Malcolm Simmons, who's headed to Lubbock to play for Texas Tech. Plus, you add Micah Hudson and Aiken, it's the best receiving core in the league, and that's a big reason why I had him number 1.
I have Oklahoma State number 1 simply because a team that has not won a Big 12 game in 2 years is now a dark horse to win the Big 12 because of what they did in the portal. And it's Drew Mestemaker, it's the Caleb Hawkins, it's Wyatt Young. I mean, these are the guys that were leaders for North Texas coming over, to Oklahoma State with Eric Morris. But it's not even just that. Oklahoma State brought in 5 FBS offensive line starters via the portal and 14 defensive players who all started FBS games last season, including James Williams from FSU, the edge, who had 34 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks over 2 seasons. Plus LSU tight end Donovan Green, former 4-star recruit, and the number 5 tight end in the 2022 class. So it's not just the North Texas guys. It's a accumulation of a bunch of talented players. And again, the reason I have them number 1 is because they're going from a team that hasn't won a Big 12 game in 2 seasons to a team that could potentially compete towards the top of the Big 12. Oklahoma State number 1 in my extremely important, very, very truthful top 5 rankings of the transfer portal classes. All right, so today is George Clooney's 65th birthday. Happy birthday to the Silver Fox, that is George Clooney. And based on his involvement with the Ocean's 11 series, I figured let's power rank the top 5 heist movies of all time.
Do you know about Clooney's prenup? I'll share with you later in the show. It's juicy. All right, number 5 for me, underrated flick, 2003 Matchstick Men. It's about a con artist with severe OCD. He finds out he has a 14-year-old daughter. They connect, and she wants to learn the family business. But it is twist after twist. The most clever part of the whole film, as one critic put it, everyone gets conned, including the audience. The biggest con in the movie is the movie itself. It is wild, and big fan, underrated. That's my sleeper pick, dark horse pick, 03 with Nicolas Cage, Matchstick Men.
Number 5, this is where I have Ocean's 11, the original, back in 2001. And to me, the part that stands out about it is not necessarily the heist itself, but rather the joy of watching ridiculously skilled people operate at full capacity. That's really what that movie's about, just insane badassery at a very, very high level. And then also just like the Rat Pack idea of having just an insane cast that's leans into it. I mean, the Ocean's 11 series, but in particular this movie, were cultural phenomenons based on that. So I have George Clooney's Ocean's 11, number 5 on his 65th birthday.
Let's go. Number 4 for me is The Italian Job from 2003.
Oh, that's a good one.
Did 176 mil with Mark Wahlberg and Jason Statham. There were a total of 32 custom-built Mini Coopers that were used for filming. They had the tunnel scene. The Metro tunnel set was so large that they couldn't fit it into any soundstage in LA, so they had to build it inside a hangar.
Wow.
Where the very first space shuttle was assembled to film that movie. The Italian Job wasn't filmed in Italy. Spoiler alert, all in LA, but it's a banger.
Shocking. Number 4 for me is The Town, the Ben Affleck movie. Do you think back to 2010 when this movie came out? Ben Affleck was kind of a joke. And this, I think, in many ways resurrected his career and I think made people look at Ben Affleck a lot differently. The Fenway Park heist scene, when you think about, we're going to make a heist movie about the city of Boston, and it's going to be including stealing money from the Red Sox and Major League Baseball inside Fenway Park. What? And then, when you go behind the scenes, it's what they had to do in order to get that to work, to get the Red Sox and Major League Baseball to approve it and get everything filmed. It's such a good movie. Jeremy Renner's fantastic. Ben Affleck, great cast. The Town, number 4 for me.
Big fan. Number 3, Ocean's 11 is where I have this Clooney flick, 2001. The director actually originally wanted to shoot the entire film in black and white, but the idea would have actually elevated costs too much that they punted. Also, most of this movie is taking place at the Bellagio. They actually filmed at the Bellagio. and took up about 30% of the casino floor during the entire shoot, where they just blocked it off to the public and everybody else gambled like nothing was happening.
Number 3 for me is Reservoir Dogs. I'm not a huge Tarantino guy, but this is one of my favorite movies. And my favorite part about this movie, in terms of being a heist movie, is there isn't even a heist in it. It starts after the heist, and you're piecing together what happens through the way they're talking about the heist and the dialogue. And there's obviously different flashbacks throughout the movie, but the fact that they start after the heist is so great. It allows the audience to sort of construct the heist for themselves,
right?
Which is the most unique part of it.
Fantastic pick. Number 2 for me, 2006, Inside Man. A Spike Lee film. Denzel Washington is a hostage negotiator trying to outsmart Clive Owen, who's a bank robber on Wall Street. But the screenplay for this movie, the idea, it sat empty for 5 years before somebody bought it. Ron Howard was going to try and do it, and then he essentially stepped down, and Spike Lee was brought in by the original creator, Brian Grazer, and it ends up being the highest opening weekend gross as a Denzel Washington film, at least at the time. Inside Man, 2006.
Number 2 for me is Heat.
Banger.
This is an all-timer. In fact, I should have had this number 1, but number 1 is one of my favorite movies ever made. But yeah, Heat, basically, it's who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Classic dichotomy of, the police officer and the robber, and the roles shifting and your perspective of who's good and who's bad changing throughout the movie. And then, just the way that it was shot, the sound, like every part of it was phenomenal from a Michael Mann, the director, perspective. And then, of course, you've got De Niro and Pacino. Like, doesn't get any better than that. Heat, number 2.
Number 1 for me, and you had this on your list, if I'm not thinking about it and somebody says, what's your favorite movie of all time? It's The Town, 2010. Was obsessed, still obsessed, would watch it from start to finish, time and time again. So this has been Affleck's project, right? He was the mastermind behind the whole thing. They just filmed and did their thing without really thinking about how long it was actually going to end up. So the original cut of the movie is over 4 hours long. Ben Affleck then realizes, hey, that's way too long for a movie. So he sat down and did the editing himself, and he trimmed it to 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Wow.
It took him 3 days. I'd love to see the original 4-hour
seriously.
version, by the way.
Number 1 for me is The Usual Suspects, one of the great movies, in my opinion, ever made. Just the heist aspect of it, but then, of course, more than anything, it's the suspense and the thriller drama of it, the mystery, Kaiser Sose, Verbal Kint, Kevin Spacey. The cast is incredible. So, it's not exactly a heist movie from the standpoint of the movie's not built entirely around the heist, but it does include a heist and is, again, for my money, one of the best movies ever made.
There are heists within the heist.
Heists within the heist, and just the shift at the end is incredible. All right, there's our top 5 heist movies. Let's get to Shahan Jayaraja from CBS Sports next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
UAB, then New Mexico, now here with the Utes. Bray motions out. Ficklin delivers a strike towards the front.
Gets the football to start the third quarter. I don't want to give them an opportunity for points here. Left side run, big hole, the cutback, and to go in the West Virginia game, but he made a difference against BYU a week ago.
Cinnamon motion, Ficklin keeps it, has some real estate into plus territory, off to the races, and the true freshman quarterback on Ficklin.
Ficklin with the fake, keep it running, picks up the block on the right side. Ficklin, the headsy, shoves the defender out the way. Ficklin, still moving, come on now.
Parker in as the Wildcat quarterback. He fakes it to Dampier, the quarterback, and keeping it is Parker, breaking the tackle. Parker into the end zone. Touchdown, Utah.
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling, I'm Ari Tepkin. Shahan Jayaraja, CBS Sports, joining us now on Big 12 Radio, one of our good friends and one of the best of the business. What's up, Shahan? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, appreciate your time as always. All right, let's start with the power ranking list we just put together. So we did our top 5 transfer portal hauls, and both James had Tech 1 and Oklahoma State 2. I had Oklahoma State 1 and Tech 2 based on the Sorsby deal. So you just mentioned via text that you would have Oklahoma State and Texas Tech at the top. So the three of us all agree here on the top 2 classes. Give us your sense of why you have Oklahoma State and Texas Tech up there.
Yeah, and I'd actually lean Oklahoma State 1 just because of the sheer level that Oklahoma State had to bring in. You know, when you look at Oklahoma State, right, they essentially import, of course, the entire North Texas offense from last year that won 11 games. That was one of the best teams in school history, actually the best team in school history. They have a 5-star quarterback in Drew Messmaker coming over, a top 50 running back in Caleb Hawkins, a top 50 wide receiver in Wyatt Young. And they also did, I think, a really good job of stocking in the trenches as well. They brought in a number of power conference talents on the offensive and defensive lines. That's going to be the big question of whether they can, whether they're going to be a bowl eligible team or whether they're going to be a legitimately good team. I give a lot of credit to their general manager, Raj Murthy, who's a rising star in this profession. They did a great job of putting together a class. And again, we have to remember, this was a 1-11 team last year. I think the fact they were able to flip it this quickly says a lot about them. I'd have Tech 2 for sure. Like, this is not the same level of class as what it was in 2025, but this is a really, really good transfer class. And, what people might not realize that Tech actually returns a decent amount of production on both sides of the ball, but they were very targeted with what they brought in. Of course, on the defensive line, bringing in 2 or 3 guys who are going to be major contributors for them. I think that they also did a really good job of stocking up at wide receiver. Losing Sorsby is a big deal, right? Like, that was the crown jewel of the class. But between what they bring back, between what they have on the roster and what they brought in, this is a team that, again, should once again be one of the best in the Big 12.
Shahan, so we all 3 of us agree Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, the top 2. Who would be number 3 on your list in terms of portal classes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was glancing over just at the 247 rankings coming in. Arizona State is number 3. I think that Arizona State has a really good case. Of course, bringing over Omarion Miller from Colorado, who I think could be one of the best wide receivers in the Big 12. He won't be Jordan Tyson, but he could be a pretty special player. I really do like the transfer class overall that Baylor finished with as well. DJ Lagway kind of headlining that group. But I think doing a really good job of bringing in 3 or 4 defensive linemen as well. Probably the swing case for me is whether Indiana defensive line transfer Hosea Wheeler ends up being eligible, which we just don't really know at this point. And everybody else's class is like, I mean, there's not necessarily a huge one that stands out to me. I think that overall, though, the league did a good job of bringing in high-level transfers. I think that there were some standouts, but really those top 2, I think, are a pretty good, level above the rest.
Shahan, I'm curious for your thoughts on Ross Dellinger's reporting on the AFCA, which basically the coaches voted to support the maximum amount of playoff teams at 24. Getting rid of championship games, and not taking the season deep into January. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think that whenever you get stuff like this, like, let's always remember, right? The AFCA is a coaches lobbying organization, and it's good to have all these different voices in the room, right? But it also kind of helps explain why some of these decisions end up being so difficult, because you have such disparate desires from each of the different stakeholders. And just for example, right, what they're advocating for is we want a much bigger playoff, and we somehow want the season to be shorter as well. Those 2 things are very hard to square. And really the only way that it can happen is if college football does their playoff directly against NFL games on Saturdays in December and January. Now, maybe they decide to do that, But if you look at the way that the playoff has been structured the last 2 years, even with just the 12 team, they are running scared from the NFL, right? Like, in fact, you even look, I mean, obviously ESPN broadcasts most of the playoff games, but they sell off the two that go directly against the NFL to TNT, right? Like they say we don't even think that this is going to be a good deal for us. And you look at the difference in ratings. So, look, it's not the coach's jobs to worry about the ratings and revenue, but it's going to be somebody else's job to worry about the ratings and the revenue. I do think that overall, especially if we move to 16 or 24, like, I love conference championship games. I love conference championships in general, but I think that it is fair to say that the thing that's actually killed conference championship games isn't the playoff. It's actually mega conferences, because there's like no good way to decide who's going to play in those games. Like the Big 12 got lucky last year with having a clear 1 and 2, but in the ACC, Miami misses the game, Duke gets in because of the tiebreakers. Like there's just no good way to do it when you're trying to find the top 2 out of 17, 18, 16 teams. Like it just doesn't work. And so I don't necessarily hate the idea of getting rid of conference championship games, just because I think that conferences have gotten to such a point that this is just frankly kind of become a joke. But again, I just think that there are so many different layers to this, and ultimately, again, like we are just not going to see college football put their playoff up against the NFL. And if that's the case, it's just really hard to see how all of these things can square together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, a team that didn't even play in the conference championship of the weakest power conference played in the national championship. Shahan, when you say, the coaches are on board with the expanded playoff, and Craig Bohl, I know, is the executive director of AFCA, but are we talking about like a dozen coaches? Are we talking about all coaches? Like we hear that term thrown out all over social media. I'm just curious, like how many coaches are actually involved in that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any other, leadership or advocacy organization, right? Like one is sort of a feeling out of what coaches want, right? I mean, these are conversations that are ongoing. There's going to be a board, a group of people who kind of make these big picture decisions for coaches. And so, again, how many people actually were behind that endorsement? Probably like 10, but I do think that it is likely the general position of many of the coaches in college football. And I mean, again, when you think about it, like we talk about these different incentive structures for different stakeholders, like coaches want to be able to make the college football playoff. And when you're talking about 24 teams, it's a lot easier to make a 24-team playoff than it is to make a 12-team playoff. That's a central part of this conversation, is that if you are a middle-tier power conference coach or even a lower-tier power conference coach, you know that you had zero chance at the 4-team. You had a limited chance at the 12-team. Well, 24, you look at some of the teams that end up in the top 24 every year, like everybody might have a chance at some point. So I think that I'm not going to say that it's unanimous by any means, but I do think that this is the general consensus among coaches, is that, 24 would be really good for us, because that means that a lot of us get to make the field.
Yeah, well said. Shahan Jeyarajah, a national college football writer for CBS Sports. Shahan, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to visit with Shahan Jeyarajah, as we do throughout the season, of course, off season. Lots of great stuff he's working on, great perspective. Great analysis, Shahan Jeyarajah. Go follow him on Twitter and check out the great work that he does. All right, on the way next, list season continues. We've been going through ranking the top 5 players at each position within the Big 12. We concluded defense yesterday with the top 5 defensive players. Now we start on offense, breaking it down by position group, including the offensive tackles. The top 5 offensive tackles in the Big 12 next. With James Amari, it's Big 12 Today, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. And as our Modelo offseason series continues, we are breaking down our top 5 players at every position. Yesterday, we did our top 5 defensive players after doing our top 5 defensive tackles, defensive ends, safeties, corners, and linebackers. Now we start on the offensive side of the football by looking at arguably the most important position, and a position that is definitely undergoing some massive change in the Big 12, and that's the tackle position. So let's break down our top 5 offensive tackles heading into this 2026-2027 season, James.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with all the turnover at this position. This was a loaded position for the Big 12 last year. This year, there's a lot of newcomers in terms of not just newcomers in the league, but like there's going to be new players on the all Big 12 teams because so many departed. There's not a lot of returning guys. Last year's all Big 12 teams, first, second, and third, only featured one transfer. So with that said, I went with a lot of returners. At number 5, I have TCU left tackle Ben Taylor Whitfield, 6'6", 315, a senior, played for one of the premier programs in the country in Duncanville High School during his high school tenure, and he has started every year on the offensive line. He was the first TCU true freshman to start on the offensive line since 2012. That was 3 years ago. Now he's a senior. So he's been back and forth between left tackle and right tackle. Last year he started at right tackle. They moved him to left after 4 games because he was so good. He helped TCU post some insane offensive numbers, including a major uptick in their ground game. And now they have an offensive coordinator in Gordon Samus, who's an offensive line mastermind. They've got a quarterback who's not going to be turning the ball over. I think he's the anchor on their offensive line. I've got Ben Taylor Whitfield at number 5.
That's too low. Number 5 for me is the true freshman tackle Felix Ojo from Texas Tech. 5-star. I think this is a guy that starts right away and will be a 3-year starter at left tackle, then move on to the NFL and be a top 10 pick. And look, there are 2 5-stars that I could have had in this spot, including Kelvin Obot from Utah, but I went with Felix Ojo. And look, I mean, for me, again, the talent, the pedigree, the size, the power, it's exactly what you're looking for in the tackle position. The number 5 overall prospect of the 2026 class. And, yeah, I mean, he allowed 0 sacks as a senior at Lake Ridge High School, only 4 pressures the entire season. He was an All-American by Max Preps rivals and Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and won the Anthony Munoz Award as the best high school football lineman in the country. Felix Ojo, the Texas Tech tackle, number 5 for me.
Yeah, he's got Jordan Seaton accolades out of high school. Number 4 for me is Andrew Gentry, the BYU right tackle. What a journey he's had. First of all, he's going to turn 25 years old in October. He committed to Virginia out of high school to play for former BYU coach Bronco Mendenhall. Then, after Mendenhall resigns, he opens his recruitment. He goes to Michigan. After Michigan, he serves a 2-year mission in Argentina, but because of COVID, moves back to the Utah area. His brother played basketball at BYU. He's always been a BYU guy. And last year, he started 14 games at right tackle. He was honorable mention All Big 12, but he was paving the way for L.J. Martin, the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year at running back. He's projected to be a NFL Draft Day 2 candidate. The only thing that might hurt him is his age, but I've got Andrew Gentry at number 4.
Yeah, Gentry just missed my list. Number 4 for me is Caden Siraki, the tackle from Baylor, played nearly 1,000 snaps in 2025, did not allow a single sack, only 2 quarterback hits the entire season, was only flagged for holding 4 times. Combination of nearly 1,000 snaps played, 0 sacks allowed, 4 penalties in a full season is really good in terms of just being the full package at tackle. So, I mean, look, he's going to enter as probably the most important player in this offense for Baylor to keep DJ Lagway upright. And they've got the right guy in the right spot to do that. Caden Siraki, number 4 for me.
Yeah, they've loaded up in the portal on the offensive line, too. At number 3, I have John Pastor from Kansas State. He was second-team All-Big 12 last year. He's a guy that really never got on the field until just this past season, so nobody knew anything about him. He redshirted in 2022, and then he battled a ton of injuries in 23 and 24. Never even had a career start until this past season, his 4th year in the program. He played in all 12 games, all starts at left tackle, over 700 snaps, second team All Big 12. He's an academic All Big 12 guy, and because of all the injuries, he gets another year. So he could be All Big 12 once again this season as a returning starter who had never started before. I've got Pastore at number 3.
Number 3 for me is the left tackle for Texas Tech, Howard Sampson, who I think, like, we look at the guys that got drafted by Tech, every one of them improved. I don't know how much Sampson improved last year. I think Sampson a year ago, he'll be one and done at Texas Tech. And that just didn't work itself out. He I think, got a draft grade that said 5th or 6th round, and he thought, I got to go back and get higher. He's 6'8", 340 pounds. All right, so start right there with your left tackle, 6'8", 340. He's a mountain of a man. And, I mean, he was the 4th highest graded tackle in the Big 12, according to Pro Football Focus. And he had the 2nd highest pass blocking grade in the entire conference behind only Jordan Seaton. So, I think, like, those numbers alone stand out. The one thing, though, and this is the knock on him, was he committed 13 penalties in 2025, and it's the pre-snap discipline that was the biggest issue for him, a lot of false start penalties. So he's got to get that fixed and cleaned up and continue to show that power and drive. But I've got Howard Sampson, the tackle from Texas Tech, at number 3 for me.
Let's go back-to-back with Mr. Sampson, because I have Howard Sampson at number 2. He is the most athletically gifted offensive lineman in the conference, 6'8", 340. You hit the nail on the head with his penalties. 13 last year, and he had 10 the year before at North Carolina. So it was already an issue, and it got worse his first year at Texas Tech. That's the only thing holding him back from being a first-round NFL draft talent, from being first-team All-Big 12. He started all 14 games. He has the highest Pro Football Focus grade of any returning Texas Tech offensive lineman, and there are 3 guys coming back. That offense that ranked 7th nationally in scoring. He also made Bruce Feldman's Freaks list because of everything he does in the weight room at 6'8", 340. Like, that's it. You clean up the false start penalties, and you're a multi-millionaire long-term NFL contract. Like, that's the only thing that's holding this kid back.
Number 2 for me is Joe Cotton, the guy you have at number 1, the Cincinnati redshirt senior, 6'7", 310 pounds. He started all 13 games and was part of one of the best offensive lines in college football last year that only gave up 7 sacks and 39 tackles for loss. The unit was a Joe Moore Award semifinalist, so you think about the guy who played left tackle who returns. That's a huge, huge addition. And look, I mean, a year ago, this was one of the best transfer portal recruits or transfer portal players in the entire conference, and he, I think, lived up to that billing from South Dakota with what he did last year at the left tackle position at Cincinnati. I have Joe Cotton at number 2.
Completely agree. Super high on Joe Cotton. I've got Joe Cotton as my number 1 offensive tackle in the Big 12. And you could almost argue that he underachieved last year, considering all the preseason hype as being the number 1 offensive line portal addition in the league. But he's the only guy returning who was first-team All-Big 12. Started all 13 games. Joe Moore Award semifinalist unit. Allowed just 7 sacks, the second fewest nationally. The offensive line, I should say, collectively. He was an FCS All-American at South Dakota and super under-recruited because he hadn't developed into his body when he was playing at Roosevelt High School in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So he goes FCS to Big 12. He's just the most proven guy to me, not necessarily in terms of longevity, but in terms of being an All-Big 12 guy. And he was the only transfer last year that made any of the All-Big 12 teams. So I've got Cotton at number 1.
Number 1 for me is the guy you had at number 5, Ben Taylor Whitfield. He's the first true freshman to start on the offensive line for TCU since 2012. And then he stepped into the full starting right tackle role the last 9 games of 24. He started 22 games over the last 2 seasons, so I just think the experience for me is what pushed him over the edge. This is a guy that I think has grown a ton over his career, and now he takes on a huge leadership role, as a senior at TCU. Offensive line coach Ricker called out Taylor Whitfield's growth between the years in spring of 2026 practice, quote, saying he matured significantly over the last 3 months with the talent and skills already in place. It was the mentality, the IQ that probably needed to grow the most, and he's got that now, it appears. Ben Taylor Whitfield, maybe the most underrated tackle in all of college football, number 1 on my list. Who do we miss?
Man, we have a lot of parallels, and Ben Taylor Whitfield is maybe the most intriguing of any of the guys because you have him at number 1. I had him at number 5. 3-star recruit out of high school from Duncanville. TCU fell in love with his body. He's been on the field a ton, but he hasn't been all Big 12. He was honorable mention. And so in terms of like the potential, absolutely, he could be the number one guy in this league, especially with Gordon Samus, who is an offensive line guru. I mean, that is how he built his coaching career and his pedigree. So I love that pick. Who did we miss? Who did I have as others receiving votes?
Real quick on Gentry. Gentry was a guy who was my honorable mention. The biggest reason for that is we just haven't seen it as much. Like, he was really good the first few weeks, then he had a really bad injury, and so now he's coming back from that injury, and he does appear to be healthy. And he's in a really big spot for BYU in terms of their offensive line. For me, their offensive line is the biggest question mark. But that's why I didn't have Gentry on my list, basically coming off an injury versus like a Ben Taylor Whitfield who started 22 straight games.
Totally. Braden Nelson, the Oklahoma State left tackle, who comes with Coach Morris from North Texas. Didn't have a ton of offers out of high school, but he was second-team All-American last season, had a really good offensive pro football focus grade. He started all 13 games, but he can also play some guard, so I'm not sure where Oklahoma State's going to have him. So he just missed for me. Let's see, who else did I have? Drew Terrell, the Houston right tackle. So he's a transfer from Miami, Ohio, but he had the number 1 run blocking grade in the entire MAC. He had the number 2 run blocking grade by anybody in the conference, guard, center, tackle, anybody on the offensive line. Started all 12 games, was second-team all-conference. I think he's a really underrated pickup. Bo Hughley is intriguing to me.
Yes.
The Colorado left tackle. He's going to be the guy that fills in for Jordan Seaton. Like, they're expecting big things from him. He was a 5-star out of high school. They call him Big Bo because he's been wearing a size 16 shoe since middle school. Like, he has an insane pedigree and, like, NFL-ready body, but the mental part just hasn't been there yet. That's why he couldn't get on the field at Georgia.
Yeah, a couple other guys. Kelvin Obot is an incoming 5-star freshman for Utah, who's a guy kind of like Ojo that you could immediately plug in potentially left tackle. And that's where, for me, it was really difficult to sort of parse between Ojo and Obot. But Obot was the guy that was just missing my list. And then I think one of the more underrated players in the tackle position is Calvin Clements, left tackle for Kansas, started all games last year. And I think he had some issues, but ultimately, like, he's back at left tackle. They're going to have him compete, I think, but he'll win the job, and I think he's a guy that could take a huge step forward. For a Kansas program that's done really good at left tackle, just had a guy get drafted. They've done really well at that position. Earl Bostic's another guy that's playing in the NFL, so that to me has been that has not been a position of issue for the Jayhawks under Lance Leipold.
Yeah, and when I looked at KU's projected depth chart, you know, Enrique Cruz, to your point, is off to the NFL. I couldn't identify like who their number 1 offensive lineman is expected to be, whereas a lot of these other schools, it kind of stood out more. Jake Taylor is intriguing to me at Iowa State. He's maybe their number 1 transfer. He was a 4-star out of high school, the number 1 prospect in the state of Nevada. He's from Las Vegas and played for that high school powerhouse Bishop Gorman. He was the number 4 offensive tackle in the nation coming out of high school. I mean, a top 4 prospect. And he originally signed with Oklahoma, but again, he's a guy kind of like Gentry that's battled injuries throughout. He only played in 4 games in 2024, and then he missed all of last season due to an injury, which is why a lot of teams, I think, didn't pursue him more. And so he lands at Iowa State. But physically, he's one of the more gifted tackles in the league.
What's really interesting, you know, we talked, I think, big picture about the defense, and there's certainly some position groups that look to have really good depth. There's some major position groups that are questionable. Offensive tackle is maybe the most intriguing position group because we just saw 3 Big 12 offensive linemen go off the board in the first round of the NFL draft, including 2 from Utah, Infano and Lomu, and then Hanator from Arizona State. So that's just a few of the guys. I mean, other guys, Enrique Cruz, were drafted as well. So, like, the position takes a step back based on losses for the draft, but you're replenishing that. And even with Seaton losing as well, you're replenishing that with Ojo and Obot. Utah has multiple incoming freshmen, 4-stars that could potentially factor in right away. So it's just an intriguing group because I think, like, we looked at quarters and it's like, man, this could be rough. Mm-hmm. Offensive tackles, to me, like, this could be a major strength for the Big 12 overall, but there's just a lot of unknowns about it.
Well, and because the Big 12 is not behind the curve compared to the other leagues. Offensive lineman, it's a premium position, especially offensive tackle in the NFL. So the other conferences are losing all of their all-league guys as well. But The Baylor offensive tackles graduated. Sam Hecht is gone. Spencer Fano is gone. And I'm just talking offensive line in general. Looking at the Big 12 All-League team from last year, Caleb Lomu is gone. The only returner that was All-League is Bruce Mitchell from BYU. And the only tackle that made any All-League team coming back this year is Joe Cotton. I mean, Max Ahanichor was second-team All-Big 12, and he was a first-round NFL draft pick. So that tells you how deep the position was last year. John Pastor was second-team All-Big 12. He's back. Seaton transfers out. Evan Tingsdahl from Cincinnati, he's back as a redshirt junior this year. And then even the third team loses a lot of guys. 20% of the Big 12 offensive linemen that were All-League last year are coming back. 80% gone. But that's no different than any other league because of the pedigree that position holds now.
Big 12 today, Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo. There's a look at our offensive tackles. The offensive tackle as a whole. We'll take a look at the interior offensive linemen on tomorrow's show, including guards and center. On the way next, though, let's get into the latest on Brendan Sorsby. Is there a path for Sorsby and eligibility? That's next. This is Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on Tune In, watched on Big 12 Studios. Well, the Brendan Sorsby saga continues to be a huge story across this conference and across college football because it could very well swing not just the fate of Texas Tech's Big 12 championship status, but potentially college ball playoff appearance and a further trip than what Texas Tech accomplished last season. And so the latest is that the Sorsby has been able to get this, and along with Jeffrey Kessler, to a local Lubbock district court. So you start there, right? Very friendly home field advantage here for Brendan Sorsby, if and when the NCAA rules against him. And I believe what we think happens here is the NCAA rules against him, rules him ineligible. Texas Tech then appeals. Would imagine then that the NCAA upholds the appeal, and then at which point Jeffrey Kessler and Brendan Sorsby can then sue the NCAA for an injunction and get him to play. And that injunction would be handed out by a district judge in Lubbock, Texas, in Lubbock County, which makes a ton of sense.
Home field advantage, Jones AT&T Stadium. So by hiring Kessler, I would say that Sorsby's team and Texas Tech assisting him, like they're prepared to go to battle, right? They are gearing up for what they think is going to be. Number one, they're trying to speed up the process so that this can all be settled before the season kicks off. Number two, they are going to have all their ducks in a row the moment the NCAA makes any type of ruling. And this has been done before. We saw it with the Ole Miss quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. He won his eligibility case in Oxford, Mississippi. Joey Aguilar, the Tennessee quarterback, his lawsuit was heard by a graduate of Tennessee. And then that Alabama basketball player who was cleared by a judge who just happened to be a university donor. Like, this is not a strategy that is a first of its kind. So local court, local sympathy. That's where it works. Sorsby can file for an injunction, hoping that this Texas judge, this Lubbock judge, just overrides any type of NCAA ruling. But I think his situation is different from those other cases because not only did he first of all, he directly violated NCAA rules, but also potentially the laws involved. State law in Texas, in Indiana, in Ohio. This could be an FBI case I saw from the USA Today. So those other cases, like all those guys are doing, they're just pushing for one more season of eligibility. The Lubbock venue is definitely an advantage, but it's not a free pass by any means when you compare it to those other cases and just how different those were.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're being realistic about it, the hiring of Jeffrey Kessler indicates that they're obviously not only, as you mentioned, going for it, but like ultimately they're hoping to get a settlement with the NCAA that allows him to play at some point in time. I do not believe Brendan Sorsby should or wants to go to the supplemental NFL draft. The last thing that he needs is this being as big of a story as it is right now, and then having NFL teams have to make a decision on whether or not they want to draft him. I don't think that will go well. I think Sorsby knows that. I think they're using the supplemental draft as leverage here, but ultimately I think Sorsby wants to return to college and improve his draft status and then get ready for the 2027 draft when this won't be as top of mind as it is right now.
Yeah.
And I think you hire Kessler to do that. Now, it's important to remember that, like, right now Sorsby appears to be using the money that he's getting from Texas Tech to hire Kessler because Texas Tech cannot pay for a lawyer to sue the NCAA for a player. They have to remove themselves from the financial aspect of that. So now I think there's a couple of things that Kessler is going to argue here, and this is what's important because what you've said is really important too in terms of like this is not an eligibility case. This is, this is not Chambliss. This is not Aguilar. This is a totally different ball of wax. But Kessler is Mr. Antitrust. Like he's at the forefront of many of the lost antitrust suits heading against the NCAA. So basically what he's going to argue is, he's paid professionally, he's paid $5 million, and that, basically he's going to argue that permanently ending his earning capacity based on $2.50 bets on balls and strike calls from 4 years ago when he was 19 in an environment that is saturated with legal sports gambling. Like, he's going to try to equate that, like, these are not equal. Penalty, sure, but punishing him that much to the point of not, limiting his earning potential that much, the NCAA's ability to do that. And then the other part to this is the due process part that I'm sure he'll argue. Basically, that the bets happened in 2022. The permanent eligibility rule was clarified in 23. So basically what Kessler will argue is that they're applying post-2023 penalty standards to 2022 behavior, retroactive punishment. Those are, I think, two aspects that are pretty not obvious, but I think pretty substantial in terms of trying to get Sorsby eligible for this season that he could argue.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to it's very subjective, right? And everybody has a different opinion on sports betting. And we know the data shows that over 50% of American males between 18 and 49 have an online sports betting account. So I think because of that, more people are going to lean in favor of Brendan Sorsby, especially when you see these are anywhere from $1 to $2.50. But those add up over time. The kid was making over 20 bets per day, we know as a fact. And there's still a lot of wiggle room in terms of this investigation and how much hasn't been uncovered. This investigation is on pause for the next 30 days until the end of May at least. Trying to think what the exact date was.
Sure, for the treatment situation.
That he went into the treatment center. The NCAA can't do anything. Now, the FBI and whoever else is working on this, they can do their thing, but the NCAA is just sitting with their hands tied behind their back for the next month. So to me, I don't see how that's going to accelerate the process in any way. And I don't know that the NCAA is going to be impacted by Kessler's hiring in terms of the timeline of the investigation. But in terms of how it's going to play out, like Texas Tech filing for reinstatement of its eligibility, that can't happen until the NCAA makes a ruling, right? And so I just don't see any way that this happens before the season. And I'm with you on the NFL draft. You don't hire Kessler if you're angling towards playing in the NFL and being part of this supplemental draft. Right? You just say, hey, I'm going to try and lay low. I'm going to go to my treatment center, and then I'm going to prepare for the NFL draft. And there's no guarantee that the NFL would take him. Like, Shedeur Sanders goes from a top 5 pick to a 5th-round pick because people didn't like him. Like, what is an NFL franchise who basically we're post-draft, we're heading into free agency, like they know what they're going to do with their roster at the quarterback position. I don't know how Sorsby, with this hanging over his head, is part of that solution for NFL teams.
Let me ask you this. What is your opinion on this matter in terms of should Brendan Sorsby play in 2026 or should he not?
I don't think he should play. My opinion on sports betting has shifted over the years and is still kind of evolving because what used to be something that was fun and casual now causes a lot of problems for a lot of people, especially younger students, men in their 20s. There are a lot of horror stories about the financial stress that sports gambling and the addiction can have.
There's some predatory behaviors from these sports books.
Absolutely.
And the fact that the phone is in your hands constantly is being leveraged by the casinos, by the books. I completely agree with you from the standpoint of, legal sports gambling was something that really became popular, and many states have it now. And I think we're starting to see over time probably why sports gambling wasn't legal in most states forever.
Yep.
But it's probably not going to go back because of how in bed, the states and the politicians are with these casinos and the sports books and how much money there is to be made. But, yeah, I mean, if you have an account, you've got money in it. I've seen this firsthand. Like, then you make a bet and you lose and you've got no money in your account or low money in your account. Suddenly you get these emails about, bonus bets. I mean, it is very predatory in terms of how they get you back in, how they get you to deposit more money and ultimately lose more money. Now, my opinion on this in terms of Sorsby is he should be able to play. and that's not to say like I don't believe that there should be harsh penalties for folks that are betting on their own team or in their own games. But for me, I'm going to pick and choose in this situation to say that, like, okay, betting on your own team to win a game while you're not even playing or factoring into that, I don't think that's as bad as some of the other ones we've seen in terms of just betting on your own team or your own games. Now, I get it. There's probably a black or white answer here that says, like, no, you just can't do that, period. End of story, and you got to make an example of him. And I understand that part of it of, like, there's got to be somebody that becomes a sacrificial lamb so that everybody else will recognize that, like, this is a big deal. It may not seem like a big deal. It may seem very easy, just like it is on your phone. But I kind of see both sides of it. Like, I think he should be eligible to play. I think the punishment doesn't fit the crime in this situation. But I also get that, like, maybe this sport and this industry needs a sacrificial lamb, and that's Sorsby.
That's well stated. And Brendan Sorsby, to me, is not a villain. If anything, he's a victim. With that said, company policy, and the company being the NCAA, has made it very clear if you bet on games, you're not playing. And so for me, the angle isn't the sports betting aspect of it. It is, you know what the rules are. Right. You know what the company policy is. You know what you signed up for. If the company tells me, hey, you can't take your shirt off on the air, I'm not going to take my shirt off on the air, right? Because I want to continue to be employed by this company. Brendan Sorsby, whether you like the terminology or not, is an employee. He's getting $5 million to perform at his job, which is playing football for Texas Tech. So he broke the rules. That's more the angle that I take. But the predatory aspect of sports gambling is a whole different conversation because it is dark. And I have a personal experience. I lived in a state where sports betting was legal. And at first, it was fun. I downloaded all the apps. I bet on games. It wasn't against company policy. It wasn't against anything I was doing in my sports broadcasting career. There were very strict guidelines in terms of what you can and can't do, and I followed those guidelines. But then it turned into, why am I spending 3 hours on a Wednesday evening listening to an NFL sports betting podcast? Like, it went from, hey, this is fun, to, hey, man, I can beat the books. This can be a side hustle for me. This can be not even passive income, just extra income. And it does not work that way.
Yeah, no.
And then I've got buddies that we get paid, and it's, boom, that's going into their sports betting account. And it's like, man, that's what was eye-opening to me. It was not just my own experience, but also watching others around me.
I mean, there used to be a lot more friction to go and gamble on sports, right? You had to either have an offshore book or a bookie. You know, you used to have to go to Vegas and have cash and walk up to the window, right? Like, that's a lot of friction. Now, like, you don't need cash. You open up the app. You live bet. I mean, it's insane how much of a difference it makes. And the cycle, it's the difference. We talked about this earlier. Like, Amazon made online shopping so much more popular, and I think sort of shed the curtain from, oh yeah, like, I don't have to be afraid of shopping online. Like, we think about Amazon as a game changer in online shopping. Before that, it was like too much friction. It led to not much consumer buying online. Similar to sports betting, right? Like, sports betting had a much smaller group of people that were involved with it because there was too much friction. You had to have an offshore book, or you had to have a bookie, or you had to go to Vegas, and then again, you need cash. You walk up to the window, right? Like, all that's gone now. So the ease for it is totally different. And I get that, like, college sports, the NFL, and sports have to protect against the idea that their games are compromised. That is the number one biggest issue with it. And they're trying to toe the line between profiting from it, with casinos and sports books being in sponsorships, while maintaining that quote-unquote integrity of the games that people will lose interest if it's not there.
Yep. And I do believe you can call this a conspiracy theory, but I think athletes, college, professional, are more impacted by sports betting than ever before.
Yes, no question.
Arizona State 30 for 30 that happened back in the 90s, that was a big deal. That's happening everywhere now. These players are so accessible via social media, via just everything is transparent now with your phone and the social media aspect of things. And that opens them up to some incredibly just terrible harassment online. But also, they're more likely to be swayed because of the access. And The NCAA is doing a really nice job of trying to identify these threats and crack down on them. They've had very harsh penalties. All the college basketball players that were wrapped up in that probe like 2 years ago when there were over 50 of them, I mean, that's just scratching the surface of what I do believe is going on.
Here's Fox Sports Radio's LeVar Arrington on Brendan Sorsby.
Here's another perspective. And it's not necessarily mine, it's just perspective. He's being made to be a villain in this situation. And maybe it shouldn't be such a rush to make him a villain. He's 21-year-old. He got hooked on an app. This is the demo that sports gambling is going after college kids, a little older, professionals just out of college. He's seeing these ads. They're all seeing these ads 24/7. It's one of the most advertised industries in all of marketing and advertising. I think there has to be a conversation as well, especially with a college student. Now, if he was a pro, I get that. You make a decision as a pro and you know the rules, or make it a point to know the rules because it's your job. It's your profession. This is where you're at. And this is where the whole conversational points with the college level are you able to say that for college students now? But until you get to that point of where you say you are a pro, you are getting paid to do this as a pro, and you have to know the rules as a pro, you still have to treat them as kids in a simulated environment to prepare them for the real world.
So I think there's a lot of truth to what LeVar Arrington's saying there. I think the biggest reason for him to be labeled as a villain, and I don't disagree with that, is the $5 million that he's getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Fair, unfair, whatever. I think there is a level of disdain for the amount of money that college athletes are getting, and he's the poster child for that. And it's like, ha! See? You had your opportunity and you screwed it up. I'm not saying that's my opinion. I'm saying you can sense that that's why he's been villainized.
Totally. And the perception, we love a fall from grace. That is the American way. But to me, there's a tremendous double standard here with Brendan Sorsby and then other situations at other programs outside of this conference. Like, Georgia's had more than 20 separate driving-related incidents since 2023. Over 20. We're talking DUIs, reckless driving, racing on public streets, where there have been injuries and arrests, and we treat it like a punchline. They're a meme. Everybody laughs about it. Brendan Sorsby gets caught betting on games, checks himself into a treatment center, and we treat it like it's a capital offense. Those are things worth talking about. Like, he's LeVar Arrington is spot on in terms of the dollar amount. It's not fair, but I think he hits the nail on the head with what we were circling back to with the rules are the rules. There's a company policy in place. You broke it, there's going to be penalties.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on Tune In, watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin.
success with Craig. Deep drop for Vita. Taking a shot to the end zone. Chris Hudson. He's got it for 6. Blitz coming, but it's picked up. Over the middle on a deep cross. And it breaks wide open. T.O. Richardson. Touchdown.
Will throw to the end zone, and what an attempt!
Fafita get a clean pocket and a deep shot for Wadley. He's got it again. Nunu leaves Weaver.
Seconds on the clock. Fafita, four-man rush this time, steps up, throws across the middle, and the pass is
And off it's Kendrick Reeson with a big opening. And he's into BYU territory.
Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Tepke. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. And let's welcome in Matthew Postins from Heartland College Sports on the show. Matthew, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Was in Michigan for a week and a half visiting family, covering the Rangers, so I'm rested and ready to go through all my emails for the last week and a half.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's always great. Best part about leaving town is the piled up emails, for sure.
It's the price you pay for going on vacation.
What's your inbox look like? How many unread are we talking about right now? Hundreds, thousands, millions?
I'm let's see. I left on the 24th. I'm back today. I've gotten back to the 30th, so I'm about halfway through.
Wow.
I've been at it about an hour. So,
want to talk with you about a piece you wrote with the Redbird deal, the Redbird Capital deal with the Big 12, and something we've talked a ton about. You know, I guess, like, I don't know why people are suddenly surprised by the chasm that exists between the Big 10, SEC, Big 12, everybody else. Maybe it's just the actual numbers that are stark. But, like, this was always coming. We knew the Big 12 members were going to be getting, you know, at least half as much every year as the SEC and the Big 10. Yeah. And we don't know exactly what the payouts will be entirely right now for the Big 12, but we'll learn soon. And I'm sure it'll be around 460 or 500 million, somewhere there. Right? So still, you know, less than half of the SEC and way more than that than the Big 10. So what is this, in your mind, what does this Redbird Capital deal do for the Big 12?
Well, I don't think it's going to do what I think folks thought it was originally going to do when Yormark introduced it a couple of years ago. They introduced it as a private equity deal where Redbird, Weatherford would get some sort of stake in the league in some way. It was kind of ambiguous. Now it's a private capital deal. So you're already seeing Big 12 teams saying, you know what, we're good. Houston has said that. I think West Virginia has said that. UCF has said that. Three schools that I kind of thought might actually tap into that $30 million line of credit. To me, what this is really about is they've created this sandbox where they've told teams, hey, if you need $30 million right up front, here it is. You got access to it for a year. Then I'm assuming you'll pay that back through the rights fees. The other piece of this to me is what they're trying to build over the next 4 or 5 years to not necessarily compete with the SEC and the Big Ten, because financially you're not going to be able to do that, but to build as many resources as possible to give their member schools as much revenue as possible. And inside of that is Redbird's investment in Paramount Global, which owns CBS, which is working to purchase TNT. and would give the Big 12 an opportunity to build a deeper relationship with those two networks. So when their television contract comes back around to being negotiated in 2030, 31, you never know what ESPN's going to want to do. They may not want to be the Big 12's primary right holders anymore. So building a relationship with the Redbird through building a deeper relationship with those networks through Redbird and through that investment could help them secure a substantial TV deal, whether it's a primary deal or a secondary deal when that television contract comes back around in a few years.
So you said that it's available for up to a year.
Yeah.
What happens after that? Is there no line of credit at all, or what does, what's the difference between 1 year and 3 or 4 years down the road?
I've taken the reporting to mean that they can opt in or opt out in the first year, and then after that, if they opt out, then they would not be able to tap into that income for the remainder of the year. So it's basically you have a year to decide if you want the $30 million or not. If you do, then you can have the $30 million, and then you can pay that back through, I'm assuming, rights fees. The reporting hasn't really been that clear about how this gets paid back. I'm assuming it will be through their cut of the money each year, a payment each year. After that, my assumption is based on the reporting that if they opt out of it after a year, then they would not have access to that money at all.
What's interesting too is, to your point, like I expected there to be maybe a few that would take it, but based on the 3 that have already publicly said they're not, do you think it goes 0 for 16? And do you almost think that, that it was always set up for it to be declined by everybody?
I think it was set up to give schools the opportunity to opt in or opt out. I mean, I think there was very clear pushback from several different administrators at Big 12 schools about the idea of somebody outside investing in the conference, having a stake, and driving where the conference goes. I think this was a more palatable option to everybody in leadership at the different schools. You have access to a line of credit that you can use or not use, and we're going to have all this other stuff on the side that Redbird's going to help us drive revenue with over the next 4 or 5 years. You can take it, you can leave it, doesn't really matter to us. I think it was the most palatable option that the Big 12 could offer their member schools. And keep in mind, Redbird's already been helping the league generate revenue. Just in the last year and a half, they've helped them generate more than $100 million. They helped them negotiate the Venmo deal. They've helped them negotiate other sponsorship right deals. And I think this investment's only going to further embed Redbird in what the Big 12 is trying to do and in the revenue they're trying to generate.
Matt, in terms of Big 12 baseball and Big 12 basketball, what's top of mind? I know you didn't write this specifically on your 3 Takes Tuesday, but over at Heartland College Sports, what's the biggest headline to you right now in the league?
Well, I think we're getting into the postseason, so you've got softball coming this week. The tournament's in Oklahoma City. I'm really interested to see if Texas Tech can win the tournament. The one team that I think is the most dangerous to them right now that they haven't played yet is Oklahoma State. They didn't play each other in conference play. Oklahoma State's the 2 seed. Ruby Malin has been tremendous the past couple of weeks on the mound. Najari Kennedy threw a perfect game in her last game at home. I'd love to see that as the championship game. And baseball, it's really interesting because Oklahoma State's men's team is kind of doing what they usually do this time of year. They're getting some momentum. They just swept TCU in a series that was really just something to watch out in Stillwater, and they're starting to build some momentum toward trying to catch some of the teams that have been leading throughout conference play. So, from that standpoint, I'm really interested to see how those postseasons go. And then with basketball, things have really slowed down with the portal, which I guess took me a little bit by surprise, only because there are teams out there that still have needs to fill as they're trying to get to the end of the school year. But at the same time, so many of these schools have taken in so many players that they don't have a whole lot of scholarships to give left. Oklahoma State's a good example. They only have 2 scholarships left to give after all the portal work they've done, after all the recruiting work they've done, and things like that. So a lot of these schools now they're targeting what they need as opposed to getting big pieces that they hope can help them at a high level next year. And I think watching schools like West Virginia, TCU, BYU, schools that don't have a lot of scholarships left to offer, seeing who else they bring in through the portal or whether they bring in a recruit from high school, I think is going to be really interesting to watch over the coming weeks.
Matthew Postins, Heartland College Sports. Matthew, thanks for your time as always, man. Be well.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Matthew Postins, Heartland College Sports, giving us his insight, especially into the Redbird Capital deal, which is interesting. We've heard 3 schools for the Big 12 already publicly say they're not going to be opting into the $30 million loan. That loan with a 10% interest rate. West Virginia, UCF, and Houston have all said no to that deal. Why did they do that? We'll get into that coming up next. Plus, what does drop rate tell us about quarterbacks heading into the 2026-2027 season for Big 12 quarterbacks? Both good and bad. And maybe why we're underrating Kansas State. Nod, nod, wink, wink. Big 12 today, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Quarterback on a run through the right side, Isaiah Marshall. He's been through it quite a long time ago. He's here in year 6. Nice catch. Henderson off to the races with a vapor trail behind him. Pistol, QB keeper again, using over the right side. First down on 2nd and short. And what do you make of the decision from Jim Zebrowski to kind of change
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Yes, it is. What's up, James? How are you?
I'll link to you, bro.
Thank you. We've got an author coming up in the next segment, Mike Chaudron. How'd you find this guy?
So I saw it on social media, some people discussing his book, essentially, and he's promoting it, and so he's super excited to be on our show. But the book is called Agent Confidential, an insider's guide to the business of college football. And let me just read you a little snapshot, okay?
All right.
Just a little, we call this a tease. From NIL deals and coaching contracts to private jet movements and buyout negotiations. This book explains how power actually moves behind the scenes, before the headlines, before the denials, and long before the public understands what's really happening.
Is it real or satire?
So he does a little bit of both. This one is real. This book doesn't try to fix college football. It explains it.
Got it. Should be interesting. We talked last segment with Matthew Postins from Heartland College Sports about the Redbird Capital deal. The bigger piece to that is the fact that West Virginia, Houston, and UCF have both, or all three, sort of publicly acknowledged they'd not be opting in to the deal. And it's based on the verbiage, 3 different reasons for it. And maybe it all circles back to the same reason, which is it's just expensive money with the amount of commitments that these universities have right now. Maybe that it's just that simple, that getting approval on $30 million at a 10% note for what spending, quote unquote, probably not something that's going to happen for a public university. But I mean, and that's what it sounds like based on West Virginia's explanation is the case. Basically just institutional risk aversion. And look, I mean, if you're borrowing $30 million, I'm sure that the administration, chancellor, et cetera, board of directors would like to know, board of trustees would like to know, like, what's that $30 million going towards? Mm-hmm. And then what's your plan to pay it back and, at that 10% rate? Houston said, what's interesting is Houston has amongst the lowest revenue in the Big 12. They're now just getting their first full share of Big 12 revenue at $40 million. And I mean, basically from what they said, it seems like borrowing $30 million when you're just sort of getting your revenue footing established isn't the best optics. And then for UCF is kind of in the opposite stage of Houston. They've started to stabilize their revenue, but they have $120 million in stadium debt they're carrying right now. So it's just, I would imagine, again, as they're sort of trying to figure out that debt, not wanting to wrap their arms around more debt. This is all like boring, nuanced, boardroom type stuff, but it's really interesting in terms of how the Big 12 tries to position itself in the future, as it's basically getting half as much television revenue every year from other conferences.
Yeah, and I think these schools are looking big picture, long game, number one. Number two, saying, hey, we're okay where we're at. Houston just won 10 games last year. Texas Tech is in a position to play for a college football national championship. I mean, they were at least in the field to give them that opportunity. And then the other thing, so 13 of the 16 are public universities in the conference. There's 3 private universities, so there's a lot of red tape. Selling or borrowing $30 million from a private capital infusion, equity, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of red tape for that in terms of like the governance structure that they have to work through. So do you think, will we see all 16 schools, you think, make an announcement in terms of their decision, if you will, on if they're going to take it or not?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And
think we'll get there?
I think we'll be 0 for 16.
Same. I don't see anybody opting in. And to me, that's not the bigger story. Like, that part doesn't matter as much as Redbird being the second biggest shareholder of Paramount, which owns CBS, working to acquire TNT. To me, this deal, this long play, is about TV rights and nothing else. So the schools have the opportunity, if they need it, to take it. But I think this is the commissioner playing chess, not checkers, as we like to say, thinking about the future, getting in to bed with a big-time player when it comes to multimedia conglomerates and just the amount of capital and resources that they have. This is a tremendous partnership from that aspect.
No, I think you're 100% right. The Redbird deal has nothing to do with the individual investments that they could make. In fact, it almost feels like Redbird didn't really want anybody to take this deal. And maybe it was just like, well, we'll offer them something to opt into, but ultimately, like, probably nobody will take this deal again, given the debt they already have or whatever commitments they already have. What's important here is the Big 12 finds revenue streams that the SEC or the Big 10 either won't touch or doesn't have. Because we continue to hit this drum, but it's not enough to just add more revenue streams. It's to add revenue streams that they aren't going to duplicate, because once they duplicate it, your ability to add that revenue stream doesn't matter, right? Because you're trying to make up for how much money you're not getting relative to them. And that's what Yormark has been tasked with, and I think he's done a really good job of that. Not just finding revenue streams, which he is, but finding revenue streams in addition that the SEC and the Big Ten won't touch. And at this point, the deal that Yormark has made with Redbird is about as good as it gets in terms of, like, they're not making decisions, they're not getting equity, but they're able to play both sides of it. They already have business relationships and ownership stake in multiple companies that could then become investors into the Big 12 from the standpoint of Venmo. The Venmo deal came together with Redbird Capital. The tournament in Vegas. Redbird Capital owns part of that tournament in Vegas.
Players Era Festival?
Players Era. So it's Redbird being able to sort of set the deck. Hey, here are businesses we own and operate that if they infuse cash, everybody makes money off of that. And that's, again, as good of a deal as you could possibly get. Now, at some point, I'm sure the Big Ten and the SEC will have similar deals. But at that point, is the Big 12 so much further down the road on it that they've established revenue streams that the SEC and the Big Ten are already only starting at that point in time? That's the part that puts the Big 12 in a better position.
Totally. And it puts the Big 12 in a position ahead of its competitors in this very one specific area. Redbird has already showed, to your point, that they're heavily invested in not just collegiate sports, but all kinds of sports. So it's a tremendous partner. To me, something tells me that with this deal, talking about the long game, we had that future graphic that we showed earlier, a little tongue-in-cheek about what the future will look like and what it looked like in 1994 that we couldn't live without. Like, to me, the commissioner's doing a phenomenal job of thinking 5-10 years down the road. Something also tells me that the Big 12 is positioning itself with these type of partnerships to add some big players during the next wave of conference realignment. We've heard about Gonzaga. We've heard about UConn. But what if it's Miami and Florida State? What if it's Clemson, SMU, Louisville, Pitt? Sure, those would be phenomenal additions that I'd be excited about. But you add a brand to this league, like a Miami or a Florida State or somebody that nobody's talking about, and it changes everything. And I think he's doing a phenomenal job of making the Big 12 as attractive as possible to pursue a large member like that when the time comes. That time is not now. It's not today. But North Carolina's showed they want out of the ACC. Clemson, Florida State, that's been very public for years now. When that happens, I just think we're in a position to make a deep run at one of those programs.
Yeah, and I think your point, what you're getting at is that every move that Yormark makes is a move that gets them closer to a larger, deeper move down the road. Redbird's a great example of that, right? You first start with some business partnerships, right? So start small, like, okay, where can you help us? Where can we provide value for what you're doing? Venmo's partnership, PayPal, Venmo partnership, right? Provides value. Great idea where you're getting into the NIL space. You're able to sell the PayPal, Venmo credit. Like, all of it makes so much sense, right? And the Players Era, same deal, right? So you kind of start with these small ventures. I'm assuming Yormark knew long term he wanted to have some sort of binding agreement with them that would provide them an opportunity to continue to infuse money and investment in a way that they're doing now at that level. But there's more. There's in terms of being a great, like, leader and business executive, especially in particular, like, you have to have you have to be in the minutia, the day to day, to help operations function day to day. But you have to really be thinking long term on all this stuff. Like, what does this one thing lead to for the next thing?
And with the Big Ten and the SEC, There are programs in those conferences that if they left, it would cripple them. Remember the Big Ten panic meter that was through the roof when Michigan was not happy about the private equity thing and Michigan was considering maybe leaving the conference, and just the panic that sat in there. I don't know that there's anybody else in the Big 12. There's any one member in the Big 12 right now, at least as of today, that would impact the conference to the level of a Texas and Oklahoma departing with the current 16 members that we had. Not even close to the level of a Michigan or an Ohio State. And the Duke Amazon package, which saw this on X, the Ohio State angle of that. Ohio State, if they took their 7 home games in-house, could make 3 times what the Big Ten paid them based off projections with a major streaming partner. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it did, like, just for that to even be a possibility, like, maybe we're having the wrong conversation. The Duke deal was just really eye-opening in terms of it was progressive, new age, but Ohio State got roughly $91 million from the Big Ten. But what would they command alone from Amazon, Netflix, Apple for those 7 home games?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you went there, because that's exactly where I was thinking of going too. There's a piece from Matt Hayes of USA Today. College sports isn't broken. Duke just proved it's for sale. What if Ohio State is next? Right, so this sort of gets into the idea of what does the future of conferences even look like? The first thought I had when I read this article was, wow, the Longhorn Network was way ahead of its time. Because that's essentially what is being discussed here from Ohio State's perspective. It's owning your own inventory and selling it uncoupled with the rest of your conference members that will increase the value of it. Now, there are very few schools that could legitimately do it. Ohio State's certainly one of them. Mm-hmm. Texas is probably another. The problem with Longhorn Network is it was a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week linear network.
Right.
There wasn't enough demand for all of the other sports, and literally, if we're talking about Texas, we're only talking about football. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe the problem with Longhorn Network was they leaned too much into the other sports, and if they had just spent all 24 hours a day and 7 days a week talking about football, it may have been more successful, but you get the point. Now, there's a reason for conference affiliation, right? So Ohio State may look at this and say, why are we with the Big Ten when we could be commanding so much more money as an independent? Now, there are benefits of it. Notre Dame's a good example of that. You get to the playoff, and now you're taking all of the earnings you get from playoff appearances and not sharing it amongst all of the conference members you're with, and you add that to the total pie you're getting from a television revenue standpoint, and suddenly you're at a much larger number. And maybe Ohio State is in position now to command more dollars in television revenue than Notre Dame would independently. But, how many other teams could do this? How many other programs could do that? Are there any Big 12 programs that could do this?
Not right now.
Maybe Kansas basketball? But even that, we're talking about Duke basketball money too. It's not Ohio State football money.
Exactly. And your point about the Longhorn Network, spot on. They were too ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Right? And if they lean into football, very much that looks differently. And so Notre Dame earns approximately $67 million per year in media revenue. They don't have to give a single dollar to a conference office. These Ohio State projections shatter that number. So, I think it's a conversation worth having. What does it look like when one single program is more valuable on its own than it is in a conference? There's a reason Notre Dame hasn't joined a league. There are a lot of benefits. And now you're seeing, to your point, a very small handful of programs, but Ohio State's the one that we're using as an example that the USA Today noted, could do this on their own and make way more. And then, what do conferences look like? What does the Big Ten look like? Some teams in a league, some teams out of a league. It's wild to think about. And that's where the Big 12 could have a tremendous advantage, because I think the Big 12 is more united, more unified than the other leagues.
And maybe the most interesting part about this whole dynamic is, the talk about a Super League. In some ways, we're already there. When you think about European soccer, you think about the Champions League, right? So every country has their own league, and then the top teams from each country's leagues then compete in next year's Champions League. Well, that's essentially what a 2014 playoff is, right? how much does conference affiliation matter after that? And it's ironic because the SEC and the Big Ten are the ones defining this, and yet they may be the ones negotiating their own death sentence from the standpoint of, what if you're Ohio State and you're able to command X amount of dollars for your regular season numbers and get playoff television revenue because the playoff deal is negotiated separately. And at that point, if it's negotiated by the playoff itself, which is run by the conferences, but will it be forever? That's the part that's really interesting. Now, look, I do think conference affiliation matters. I think when you look at the Big 12 specifically, the unity part of it is really important here, and the ACC is not. Like, to me, more than anything, the Duke story tells me the ACC has no unity, but the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12 have a lot more in terms of, like, we're doing what is in the best interest of this conference. That wasn't something the Big 12 enjoyed for many, many years with Texas and OU when they constantly felt like they were dragging the rest of the Big 12 with them. Well, now the Big 12's proven to be able to fly by itself.
I mean, Duke just showed every blue blood elite program in America that these major streaming companies will come to you if you're worth it. And Michigan and Ohio State are two that have already shown they might not be as tied to the Big Ten as initially thought.
Yeah. Well, and
just some of the things they've flirted with.
Well, remember, USC and Notre Dame tried to sell their game to Netflix. They're trying, and the Big Ten was like, no. Now, if the ACC had done that with Duke, that only drives Duke away further, right? Like, it's so obvious that the ACC is moving towards blowing up because they're sort of letting those who can get away with whatever they want. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, you're just driving the conference further and further away.
Mm-hmm. And when does it potentially drive away blue blood programs that are in leagues that are disgruntled because they're being told what to do, what they can and can't do? That's the fascinating part to me. But I thought it was really interesting, and some of the numbers blew my mind. Like Ohio State making 3 times that for their home games. The dollars are just, I can't even wrap my mind around it.
And it makes sense. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Bama, maybe Georgia, Duke basketball, Kentucky basketball, Kansas basketball. Those are the programs that can sort of fly by themselves.
Especially when you see an Alabama football or Alabama making $15, $20 million less than Purdue.
Well, that's what drives them away. But the ironic part is there's only so many streaming services to go around and only so much money.
Mm-hmm. So then it becomes an arms race. Who's going to get swooped up by them first?
Right. And that's where, like, okay, if Ohio State made the decision to go independent, it'd be great for them. There are other schools that may think about it, and then they go, and then it's like, oh, wait, this isn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Or it's really good, and they're like, hey, we've got to go too, and we've got to go quickly. And then you've got FOMO kicking in, the fear of missing out, and it is madness. The Wild Wild West on steroids.
Just imagine, like, the shootout at the OK Corral, but everybody's on steroids.
Just a bunch of bodybuilders.
Big 12 today, Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. With James Westling, I am Ari Tepkin. Mike Chaudron, the author of Agent Confidential, joins us next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Tight end in motion. And a quick slant again that's caught, and look out. Kobe Prentice, his second catch of the early hours of this one in the evening. Yards. The one miscue. Oh, no miscue there. Touchdown, Kobe Prentice. His 6th of the year. Only 17 catches. All he does is catch touchdown.
Offset right as Robertson begins his drive. Steps up in the pocket. He pushes vertical. That's complete. Already inside the 30 of Houston.
Sawyer did a great job navigating that pocket. But watch Prentice on the back end. The route on the outside buys up one of the... We're aided. A bounce from Oklahoma State. Wide open. Running free. Kobe Prentice. Give the man 6.
Just speed. You're talking about speed. Nothing to it. Just one right pass. Dylan Smith, the safety, who's just squatting on it. It's something this offense lacks as we go versus Arizona State.
Pass again, this time. Into the end zone it goes. Completion to Kobe Prentice.
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. We are presented by Modelo, and we are pleased to be joined right now by the author of Agent Confidential, Mike Chaudron. Also, you can follow him on social at Faux Jimmy Sexton. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. It's nice to be with you.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Let's talk about this book. What is it about?
So this book is about the business of college football. So if you think about the college football that we love, right, the pageantry, the rivals, the traditions, that's what the fans see every Saturday, and it's wonderful. The intent of the book is to show the business side of college football. And what we're trying to do is pull the curtain back on how the business is actually run around coaching contracts, crazy buyouts, NIL, conference deals. You were just talking about Redbird. There's just a lot going on. So we tried to take the business of college football and put it in terms where the average fan can see what is really happening. Because once you realize what's happening behind the scenes, you'll really never look at college football the same again. You'll still love it, but it'll look different to you.
Yeah, Mike, and I love how you note inside the book we'll learn how decisions are made long before they're announced. How long are we talking? Yes. Like just big picture, how long are some of these major conversations happening and agreed upon behind the scenes, whether it's conference realignment, coaching deals, whatever it is, before they're announced?
They're happening way before the time frame, James. In the case of coaching, ADs are meeting with key agents before seasons start. So a lot of times the deals are done, nothing is agreed upon, but they'll talk about terms and what would it take, that type of thing. So when you hear we're going to do a nationwide search, the deal is almost already done at that point. It's usually down to two people. Terms are well understood. That's why Kalen DeBoer was able to be hired by Greg Byrne in 42 hours. The deal was done pretty much right after Saban ended his press conference.
I'm curious, what insight you're able to get through agents, and obviously there's been so much written, about the behind the scenes business aspect of college sports over the years. So what's maybe different about this book?
Well, the thing about this book is I merged my business experience. I have been a senior level sales leader in the testing, inspection, certification business for over 25 years, have negotiated, millions of dollars worth of contracts. And then at the same time, I've been friends with coaches, have spent a lot of time on sidelines and behind the scenes, starting right here in Johnson City, Tennessee at East Tennessee State. So I merged those two together. As coaches started to come up, they didn't have agents. They would ask me to assist them, do research, that type of thing. I'm not an agent, guys. Don't hear me say that. But I would make phone calls on behalf of up-and-coming coaches. Some of them are household names today. So I merged all of that together, and it gave me a really good insight into how the sausage is made. And in the book, I lay out basically how it started all the way through Jetgate and the large buyouts and Jimbo Fisher and that type of thing to really get to where we are now in college football to show how the decisions are made.
Mike, what kind of, or did you get a lot of pushback as you tried to kind of essentially investigate college football and what happens behind the scenes? What was the reception as you try to identify sources and get information?
Well, so the reception was actually very good. But in the book, I do name some names. I have permission from those coaches to use their names, Jamie Chadwell, Jeff Farrington. There are other coaches that I mentioned, but do not mention by name because I did not have their permission to. So I think the reason the reception was positive is that I honored the confidentiality and I kept things at a very high level to not out some of the coaches or some of the situations that I was talking about. But the reception was really, really good. I sent snippets to quite a few of my friends in the coaching business, and they were all very positive. I recently sent Taman an example of a coach who said, this is exactly how it works. I used to be a head coach. I've sat on the side of the table. Mike has nailed it.
What's maybe the most interesting or a couple of most interesting things you found out, whether you can name them or not?
So probably the most interesting things, the first thing I'll do is bring up something that I think really was the catalyst to all of this. And I'm going to go back to the early 2000s and the Auburn Jetgate scandal. If you remember, Auburn was coached by Tommy Tuberville. Louisville was coached, by Bobby Petrino. Auburn boosters and the AD and the president got on an airplane and went to Louisville and interviewed for a job that was not even open. And it was supposed to be in secret. Well, it all came out. Tuberville got an extension. But the point that I make in the book is there were no consequences to it. Yeah. Zero, other than some bad press to Auburn and having to give Tommy Tuberville an extension. So my point was that really is when it all started to when there were no consequences. Coaching was a free-for-all. And so that's how we put it all together from there. So, we lead from there. We talk about large buyouts. We talk about, I've got a chapter called the Kiffin head fake. And the Kiffin head fake was when Auburn was desperately trying to hire a coach, ended up hiring Hugh Freeze. And everybody thought Kiffin was going to go. And that's because the agents behind the scene were floating his name for the job. Kiffin never had any intention of going, but he got a big contract extension at Ole Miss because of it. And that's the kind of things that surprised me the most is the information and disinformation out there that is allowing coaches to get extensions. I mean, how many times do you see a coach mentioned for a job and then the next day, oh, by the way, his existing school just signed him to a raise and an extension? Those are related.
Yeah, I mean, Kalani Sitake being up for the Penn State job this offseason is another prime example. The private jet tracking that you referenced there, that's become a fan obsession.
Yeah.
So is that is that useful intel, or are these programs already like 3 steps ahead of the plane spotters?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Most of it is the schools are 3 steps ahead because you can now put your tail number on there and void it. You cannot track N1 UT or N1 UA because it's not trackable. But there are other ways of tracking it. I am also a private pilot, so I know of ways using ADS-B data that you can track flights that aren't showing up on Flight Aware. So there's some ways of doing that. I mentioned in the book about Cecil Hurt, the late sports editor at the Tuscaloosa News. I found out that a jet had left Boca Raton, headed to Tuscaloosa. I gave it to Cecil, and Cecil posted it. So, but nobody realized that private jet probably had, the AD from Florida Atlantic was headed to Kiffin. So, but now I think the schools are 3 steps ahead of it. One interesting thing I found out in the research of this book, there will be empty planes going places to actually throw off the scent of the plane trackers and people trying to figure out what's going on. No kidding. I know of a jet that ended up going somewhere and picked up a load of oysters for someone. And it had nothing to do with the coaching search, but it was believed to be. So the misinformation, and then the other point that I do in the book is I talk about how agents and reporters, work together. In other words, somebody like a Jimmy Sexton might give a reporter a scoop. So the reporter gets the scoop, and then the reporter, will tell Jimmy things or tell other agents things. So it's, I talk about that in the book too, how it all is tied together.
Mike, how much does it cost to send a jet as interference for like you said, to throw off the scent? How much does that cost?
Yeah. You're looking at, depending on the size of the private jet, but a mid-sized jet will run you, in the $5,000 to $7,000 an hour rate plus a crew fee. So somebody's going to spend $20,000 probably to throw the scent off. But if you're talking about an 8-figure contract, that doesn't even round up the decimal.
Right. True. It's just funny to hear people complain about how much money athletes are getting, and yet there's this much money being spent on the coaching side. Last thing for me would be, this is very SEC heavy. Does it translate across the board, do you think?
Yes, it very much does. I mean, I'll be transparent. I am an Alabama alum. I tried to be school neutral in the book. And in fact, I really wanted to go much harder against Auburn. However, they buy books too. And as the old head ball coach used to say, and they haven't even been colored in yet. So, the folks from Auburn will buy books too. But it really does translate. I think it's really translates more across the large conferences, the Big 12s, the Big 10s, the SECs, the ACCs, a little bit. I mean, some of my sources are in the Power 5 conferences, and there's some of that. So, I mean, when I was using the story about the Kiffin head fake, Hugh Freeze was already lined up. The head fake was just to get Kiffin a raise. And then Jamie Chadwell, who was at Coastal, was already lined up to replace at Liberty. So it's interesting how it is all integrated.
Mike Chaudron, who is the author of Agent Confidential and on social, on X, at Faux Jimmy Sexton. Mike, thanks for your time. Be well.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed being on with you guys.
Yeah, same here. Enjoyed having you. Interesting stuff. Very well connected, obviously, and using that information to write this book and compose it. And look, I mean, there's been a lot written, especially from a book publication standpoint, on the business inside college sports. But what's interesting about that is, like, it's a constantly evolving business, and even more so in the last 5 years. So just always kind of interesting to peel back the curtain on it.
Yeah, my personal fave is the jet spotting. Don't trust it. The message boards are notorious for tracking flights. This coach could be headed here. I remember Iowa City to Chapel Hill. It's Ben Jacobson, or not Ben Jacobson, the Iowa basketball coach.
Ben McCullum.
Thank you. Headed to North Carolina.
But, like, what's the purpose of that? I mean, you're spending $30,000 to send a jet to throw off the scent of message boards?
Right.
No? What's the purpose?
That's a great question. It's a great point. Thought the same thing. 20 or 30 grand? A smoke signal jet to pick up oysters? I mean, I guess it says that the athletic departments are very connected to what happens internally with the fans. And then just all the agent plays, too. There is a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah, tons of it, right? And if Jimmy Sexton controls most of the market, there's going to be a ton of misinformation that's being fed by Sexton because Sexton's sending legitimate stories to them. Really interesting stuff. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo with James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepke. Did you have something else to say?
Oh, no.
Say something.
Yeah, I did. The Kalani Sitake piece, like when he was talking about Lane Kiffin and all the strategy happening behind the scenes and coaches not having any interest in a position, but their agent will use that as leverage, and I believe that's exactly what happened with Kalani Sitake.
Yeah.
We had guests on this program saying there's a 70% chance he's going to Penn State, and we're thinking, I just don't see it.
Yeah, no way. He was never going to Penn State. The guy who spent his entire life in Utah, coaching in Utah, going to BYU, growing up in, for the most part, in Provo. Like
private university.
He's going to suddenly go to Penn State?
More money than they know what to do with.
Yeah,
they're fine.
It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Latrell McCutcheon is a bad dude.
And McCutcheon absolutely changes this ball game.
Levitt thought about taking a shot. Instead, he takes his shot from Latrell McCutcheon. And McCutcheon with bad intentions on that hit on Levitt.
Mack, the second, is playing that defensive end spot. And Buren crushed on the corner blitz. There's Latrell McCutcheon Sr. First sack of the season, and it was a loud one.
Out of an empty set. Murphy finds Wells, can't hold on. And they rule that incomplete. Latrell McCutcheon, who Willie Fritz believes is an NFL player with the PBU.
But he is some player, not afraid to make tackles either.
High snap. Welch wrestled down the backfield. That's Latrell McCutcheon,
a willing tackler. You know, he's a guy he only goes about 185 pounds at 6'1".
Another bad snap and exchange, and McClain has to run for it. He lost his hat. McCutcheon absolutely changes this ball game.
That's 126 nationally. Awful. Quick toss. Man. Gets popped. The ball is out, and it's out of bounds. Two leaping Cougars defenders, and Latrell McCutcheon and Sione Fotu
Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. If you have not yet heard and participated in the huge party that we throw every single day on Big 12 Radio, the time is now, the Big 12 Power Hour. Join the party. Each and every day, you can catch glimpses of the shows we've done as a part of Big 12 Radio. Starting at 1:45 Central. Starting at 1 o'clock Central, you can get the top 5 newcomer series we did weeks ago, the best safeties, newcomer safeties in the Big 12, which may be the best transfer portal haul in the Big 12 overall. Cam Chappa and the kid from Nebraska going to Arizona.
Yeah, Malcolm Hartzog.
Lyric
Rawls.
So, yeah, I mean, you could hear all about the top 5 newcomers to the Big 12 at the safety position starting at 1, and then check out our interview of the day at 1:45 Central. That will also play at 3 o'clock. So we've got 2 power hours each and every day. Taking a look at our top 5 newcomers and then our interview for the day each and every power hour, sponsored by Modelo. 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock Eastern Time.
Trying to think. Yeah, and I'm trying to think who I had as the number 1 newcomer at the safety position. I know I had all of the guys you just mentioned. It may have been Texas Tech, Oklahoma. I think maybe it was the kid from Houston. Houston's got 2 high-level safeties coming in, one from Stephen F. Austin, the other from Tulane. Kansas State, Prevard is considered a safety, 6'2", 200, all-ACC from Virginia. But in terms of those top newcomer lists, I'm sure I could go back through my text to Anthony and find it, but loaded position in the league.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. How much would you think? So Boise State is installing new turf. I don't know if it's still going to be blue. But basically, they've sold off portions of the old Smurf turf, the original Smurf turf, which is 40 years old. And so they cut off parts of it and sold 400 square foot sheet of the Smurf turf. How much do you think that would go for?
A sheet? Like, what are we talking
400 square feet.
400 square feet.
Which will then be professionally installed in the winner's home. It was sold last night via auction. Take a stab at how much it went by.
Man, Boise loves their football. Blue turf. I'm going to guess 6 figures.
So I would have thought that too. 25 grand?
Wait, what?
I know. I actually kind of felt like that's a pretty good deal.
This guy got a phenomenal deal. $250,000, I wouldn't have blinked an eye. Like, what? With all the money floating around when it comes to donors and boosters and college football and NIL, 20 grand for 400 by 400 feet?
Yeah, and I'd imagine, Jeremiah Dickey.
Well, you said 400 square feet. It wouldn't
400 square feet. Jeremiah Dickey, who is the Boise State athletic director, he said, obviously you're looking for every revenue stream you could possibly find, but I think what's interesting about this is, I would imagine when this became an idea, they were like, we should go for $100,000, I would think.
Yeah, they didn't plan on using that money to pay their third-string long snapper. They're joining the Pac-12, for goodness sakes. By the way, I can verify the blue turf isn't going anywhere. So if Big 12 schools have games on their schedule at Boise State, which I think a couple do in the near future, it will still be played on the blue field. It is the 7th edition of the blue turf. They're going to install it this summer right after they've got a Hot Wheels monster truck live event, which is huge. And then the Banana Ball World Tour. So they're going to do it after the Savannah Bananas are in town. Then they'll install the new blue turf.
Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Yeah, I had Cam Chappa as number 1. You had Josiah McGrew, safety for Arizona State.
Yes. Big-time player, yeah.
Big time.
Who
I had
else?
Lyric Rawls, number 2. We missed Jacob Bradford at West Virginia. You had Jacob Fields, TCU. Total miss on our part here just talking about this casually. Boo Carter, Colorado transferring into Colorado, I should say, from Tennessee. 5-star kid out of high school. Like, Deion's still bringing in these highly touted SEC dudes.
Big reason why Colorado made my top 5 list. Did not make yours.
Not today.
Not today. So I'm hoping you could explain something to me.
The George Clooney prenup?
That, but first, brain rot.
Yeah, do you know what brain rot is?
Only because my kids talk about it constantly. But I couldn't place like the context of it. Is it like some sort of viral meme sensation, which are 3 words I'm not even sure fit together like they should?
No, I think it's just like an overview way of talking about social media, YouTube videos, shorts, TikTok, Snapchat, all of the things that really aren't productive for us in any capacity. But we're just scrolling TikTok, video after video, and getting sucked into what we know. And it's become a meme, but it's actually a very real thing.
Well, yeah.
Brain rot. We are rotting our brains.
Yes. Okay, so there's 2 parts of this, which is the obvious one, which is, yeah, we are rotting our brains. Even read something about how, the way in which ChatGPT and AI have taken over at colleges' campuses, in which, like, basically what we're producing are not people that are educated, but rather are educated on how to go to a computer to become educated on something. So they're semi-literate. And then remember, not everything you read on AI is factually accurate. In fact, a lot of it is not. So imagine just how the difficulty of that. So no question, it's brain rot. Now, AI is an incredible tool that can help you learn about a lot of different things. The problem is if you're constantly using it as an external memory, then nothing is going into your internal memory.
Yeah, totally. And I don't use AI for anything that isn't verified. Like you can throw that into your prompt as just like it's always there. Everything has to be fully verified. So if AI, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or Grok or whatever, tells me something, but there's no link to an external study or article, I'm not buying it. Because to your point, they can spit out whatever they want. And these companies do have an agenda. They do have a narrative. So that's a very black and white thing for me that I think is a very gray area for a lot of others, and especially our youth, right? Like in terms of don't believe everything you read. Well, now don't believe everything that AI spits out. And TikTok was forced in 2024, a Kentucky lawsuit forced TikTok to essentially produce this study in terms of the dopamine kick and how people get addicted to it, and essentially their entire foundation for how they're so successful. And TikTok's own research found that the habit formation of scrolling TikTok kicks in after only 30 minutes of use, 35 minutes to be exact. Like if you, and I've never downloaded TikTok, but if I had it and I spent 35 minutes on it, they've got me. Now that's 260 videos.
Now 35 minutes consecutively or 35 minutes over the course of multiple days?
Rapid fire, consecutively. Okay.
35 minutes?
35 minutes.
That's a large waste of time.
So, because people spend hours on there, man, especially like kids in the age 10 to 20 demographic, and probably even a bigger number sample size than that.
Does your 10-year-old kid have access to
No,
TikTok?
it does not. But I know a lot of 10-year-olds that do.
I'm not judgmental, but I am.
Yeah, no. Judge all you want. So TikTok videos are like 8 seconds long. So 260
Why are they
videos.
so long?
Long?
Yeah, 8 seconds. Get to the point,
Right.
If anything, they should be 2 to 3 seconds.
Yes.
Save me 5 seconds. Get to the next video.
Dude, the research is dark, and I experience it a lot with this class that I was teaching in the spring. We talked about John Sterling, who passed away, the Yankees' longtime radio play-by-play announcer. I pull up a 5-minute highlight reel of his highlights. The students are super engaged for the first 90 seconds. Most of them made it to about 2 minutes. By the time I got to the 2.5-minute mark, everybody was so distracted and had moved on mentally in terms of their attention span that I cut it off. I was like, I've completely lost them. And even myself.
2.5 minutes may be an eternity.
To them it is. To them it is. And it even felt that way to me. Because I'm analyzing, can this hold their attention for 5 minutes? Not even close.
Not even halfway there.
Not even halfway. We get to the halfway point, and I'm like, this feels like it's got to be about done. It's been on forever. I click pause, 2.5 minutes. Well, yeah, they're used to watching 5, 6, 7-second videos on TikTok. 8 seconds is now a long time in terms of our attention
So what did they do? They start pulling their phones out? They start looking on their laptops?
No, yeah, most of them have their laptops in front of them, and I can just tell. I can read a room to the point where, yeah, they're not watching that at all. They've moved on. They're checking emails. They're texting. They're doing whatever it is that they need to do for another class or another project, or their friends trying to figure out what time they're going to get out of my class so they can hit the bars, whatever the case was.
Right.
They clearly had checked out. And I'm thinking, man, like 2.5 minutes. Like, we would sit through video after video, like long-form, hour-long sessions where, like, you can't do anything. When we were in the classroom, like, you've got to dial in for that full hour. Can't be done. Can't be done anymore.
It's crazy. Now, what's the brain rot meme? My kids keep talking about brain rots, like this brain rot, that brain rot. Do you hear about that?
No, I just know it as a term.
Man, it's just crazy to see, like, as you get older, like, the same things your parents used to complain about. It's like, wow.
Looks just like a very disformed, disfigured head.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like, all different kinds of brain rots. There's songs, and they're all just, like, stupid for the sake of being stupid, and then they catch fire. It's like one of those things where I'm like, man, do I feel like a dad now? Like, I don't like it because I don't know about it, and it seems stupid and dumb to me. Like, wow, I'm my dad. This is the same thing that happened when I would come home and tell him about something that he had no idea about.
Totally.
I don't know what it is. I don't like it. It's dumb.
My favorite is when you said that your son liked to ask you, like, random sports trivia questions.
Oh, or, like,
who was better than this player in his prime,
yeah.
and you just set that aside like, ain't nobody got time for that. I'd be so in on that.
But there's sometimes it's like a quarterback and a wide receiver. It's like, dude, the quarterback, like, we got to understand positions here. You know, like, the quarterback is going to be better. Who's better, Tom Brady or this guy? Or, like, who's better, this player or that player? It's like, but you're missing the impact here. You know, there's so much more context needed here. You silly little 7-year-old child.
All right, before we go, you want to hear the George Clooney prenup?
Okay, so George Clooney gets married. He's got a prenup that who's his wife?
Is today his birthday?
65, Mr. Clooney.
65. At 65, George Clooney's wife is Amal Clooney. She's a high-profile attorney. This is a viral internet rumor that podcasters, etc., are saying is fully verified, but there's a lot of gray area. But anyways, the rumor is that they have a prenup, and in the prenup it states that, and this was her idea, okay? You locked in? Her idea. If the two of them are not physically intimate at least 3 times per week, George Clooney has to pay $100,000 to his wife. And the idea was that if he's too busy, too distracted, or not just showing up as a husband, it costs him financially. Is this like the idea behind the whole thing is she wants to stay connected to her husband? But
I love it. That's
George
amazing.
Clooney.
Sign me up.
You read
George
that,
Clooney
you
is
say,
so hot that his
who's
wife put in the prenup that they have to make love 3 times a week, otherwise she pays him $100,000.
He pays her.
He pays her $100,000.
$100,000.
Insane.
It was her idea.
That's insane.
She wants them to stay connected. She wants to be a priority.
That's insane.
Just the most George Clooney of all George Clooney things.
He's also 48. So.
George being George.
Just George things.
George being George.
Things you and I will never know about.
He's not denied it either. Like, they've been real weird about it.
Wouldn't you?
I mean, it's just a little
Also,
bit
imagine
intrusive.
if that was the opposite. If Clooney put that in for her. That would not hold up in court. It's really interesting, the dynamics there.
Wouldn't be good.
All right. Thanks, of course, to our producers, Anthony Smith with Big 12 Studios. Thanks to David Turner from Tune In. Thanks to James Wesley. I'm Ari Temkin. Big 12 Today is back tomorrow. Don't forget about the Big 12 Today Power Hour, top 5 additions at safety, and our interview of the day starting at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock Central. But for now, Big 12 Today is out. Peace.